Now let's see if I can remember how to work this and make this work. Okay. Okay. Live. There we go. Oh, I saw that puff. That's an amazing way to start. Holy shit. Okay, I'm gonna have a drink to that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh my god.
You got to come out of a cloud of smoke. It's like the WWE intro.
Oh,
Gotta have heavy metal music playing or something.
Jesus fuck, that was like, it was like opening up the van door, you know, there's like old Volkswagen hippie vans and the smoke just puffs it down.
That's like my high school, man.
Man, that was really funny.
Easy van covered in spray paint, smoke right out. Everybody's got dreads like me.
I love it. You know, I could never get dry. Actually, I wanted to try the dreads when I was in like the equivalent of high school, secondary school here. I wanted to try it out, and I could never figure out how to do it. I couldn't figure out. I had friends who actually went and they went to like a hairdresser, and he got like his hair. They actually put it together like into dreads. They braided it. They did something, and they actually made dreadlocks. And but I don't know. I could never figure out how to. But I think that most people just get dreadlocks from just chilling and just kind of leaving their hair alone for a while. Is that right? Just like not like brushing or combing or something.
Basically, yeah. Like when I did it, I had a friend of mine just section it off and then comb it all, like back comb it all with dog grooming comb, actually. And
Nice.
honestly, and I think that you look much better with the Beatles haircut. It's way more fitting.
Bringing the Beatles back, yeah.
I got to bring it back.
Bringing it back. Working hard, you know. No one else is doing it, so look.
That's right. Absolutely.
Except, well, you know, aside from the fact that they're fucking libs. Oh man.
The Beatles. Well, most of them are dead, so you know.
So yeah, we can't hold it against him too much. But John
No.
Lennon was a real piece of something once you look into his politics.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. And it's like all these like, cases of like abuse against him and stuff like that. And yeah, he
Oh,
was
boy.
all talk, lib, bullshit, real opportunist, real super disappointing.
Well,
Great singer, great
and I
musician.
know actually back in the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry, excuse me. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I just finished watching a movie by them. I don't remember what it was called, but at one point they like show a quick scene of I think like Che Guevara, a Che Guevara poster, and then like another quick like flash of like some graffiti that said "Smash Capitalism" on it. So I mean, like at one point back in the day, maybe they were more like radical or hardcore than they ended up being. But it's kind of like any one of those like major bands that got popular back in those days and tried to do the anti-capitalist thing. Like it's always like a push and pull. It's the same sort of thing with Rage Against the Machine. I think that they're in the same sort of boat where like, yeah, they're super anti-capitalist, but they also charge tons of money for like the tickets to go to their show and like sell merchandise that says commie on it. I'm no better. I sell merchandise with Anarchist A's on it. So I don't know.
We said on our YouTube platforms.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you do?
Yeah. Oh, the contradictions. Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, I meant to ask you as well. How have you been? I think you mentioned that you've been doing a bunch of reading. You've been reading a bunch of Mao and stuff like that. I'm so excited. I'm so pumped about that. I'm really looking forward to this arc, the Maoist arc.
No, you know what's funny is like as soon as I started learning about socialism, Mao is one of the first authors that I drifted to. Just because a lot of the language is so very direct and so simple to understand.
Yeah, it doesn't fuck around.
Especially with things like guerrilla warfare and stuff like that. You don't really have to have like a PhD in socialism to get a lot of that stuff. Complicated stuff like on contradiction and that sort of thing. Then you start to need to know a little bit more. But I really like him for his straightforward talking. It's refreshing.
It's refreshing. It's also enjoyable as well. It's like a poet. Reading Mao is like reading poetry in many cases, you know, which I think is really nice. It's just a really enjoyable thing to read. As you said, things like on contradiction, stuff like that can be a little bit more heady, a little bit more difficult. But in general, it's pretty straightforward and extremely useful and extremely practical, you know. So I definitely recommend everybody checks that out. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you're doing more reading of Mao and you're enjoying it and getting more into it. And yeah,
it's great. Take the Mao pill.
Well, actually, between the last time we spoke, you and I spoke, I took the Mao pill. Big
Oh,
time.
hey, cool.
Yeah, I ended up.
There you go.
Well, you know, it's actually it's been pretty interesting because I remember like some of the criticism, you know, because we talked about this a little bit like back and forth like on Twitter and you know like on our student forum. Like we've engaged in this a little bit, and one of the things that I realized within the classical Marxism Leninism that hadn't been updated to include the teachings of Mao and stuff like that was that, you know, some of the criticisms that, you know, anarchists would generally level at Marxist Leninists, where unfortunately there was some truth to them. You know, there was some truth to the fact that there can be this centralization of power, which if you don't have systems in place to check that and to make people accountable, to pull back and to correct and to make sure that the masses are in control and all this sorts of things, if you don't have these checks and balances there, then they get abused, you know, and that's what happened with you know, my old party, the CPI, and when that
Oh,
happens,
really?
yeah, well, you know, it's just it was basically, of course, with any Marxist Leninist, any scientific socialist organization, we abide by democratic centralism, and unfortunately, a lot of organizations, they basically abandon the democracy part of it. So there's meant to be like a dialectical relationship between democracy and centralism. One informs the other. You have democracy, then you centralize. You know, so it's kind of this unity, this unity that's achieved. Of course, you have diversity of thought and then unity of action. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and it needs to be
That's
that
really interesting.
dialectical. Well, it needs to be a dialectical process and a back and forth. But unfortunately, a lot of organizations and a lot of these kind of classical old communist organizations are not really taking the democracy part seriously. It's very much just centralism. It's just all top down leadership telling you this is how it's got to be and this is how it's going to be. And if you don't agree with that, then it's my way or the highway. I think in many ways, you know. So yeah, so
So
it is quite interesting. It is quite interesting. I do remember like when it happened, and people from all over the world were telling me about this, and they were telling me that they had a very similar experience as well. And when I say
yeah,
this is
me
happening with
too.
communist organizations, I'm really referring to like old style communist organizations, as in the Marxist Leninist, and you know what some people might call revisionist revisionist Marxist Leninist organizations. This doesn't really seem to be an issue with Marxist Leninist Maoist organizations or committed anti-revisionist Marxist Leninist organizations, but yeah, like everybody from like all over the world was getting in touch with me and echoing this same problem, and you know, it kind of forced me to deal with that and to move I suppose beyond that onto the next stage where we actually deal with problems rather than just kind of sticking our head in the sand and acting as though, you know, this isn't potentially an issue, you know. So
That's so true. And you know what? My experience is exactly the same thing. Whenever I've tried to get involved in already pre-established organizations, it overwhelmingly seemed as though those organizations got so used to losing that they just created their own little microcosm bubble where they refused to take any outside opinions or look beyond themselves for any kind of answers, right?
mm,
One group that I spoke to was a Maoist group. Fucking hated me, but but for reasons that are like I'm a bit of an abrasive person when I get involved in groups, right? Because I'm like,
really,
hey, let's
you're so wholesome.
I am, well, because I am, you know, I have a YouTube channel for a reason. I'm political. I have strong opinions. So
Mm,
when I get into an organization, I'm very quick to challenge the hierarchy and say, hey, listen, I think that we could do better if we do this sort of thing or that sort of thing. And I had just finished reading like a whole bunch of Mao, right? And
based,
I went into this
so
organization
based.
and I'm like, you know what we got to do? We got to do some mass line. We have to go out and we
Oh
actually have
shit.
to go knocking on doors and talk to people. And everybody just threw their hands up. They're like, "What are you talking about? Knocking on doors?" I'm like, "Dude, like that's how they did it. They went and talked to people in their area. They organized and they're like, listen, Aaron, you can't do that. If we went and knocked on doors, people would pull a gun on us immediately and tell them to get off their lawn. Why? How could you even imagine knocking on doors and saying, "Hi, I'm a communist. Do you want some communist manifesto pamphlets?" And it's funny because like there is this disconnect between like what I was trying to say, which was like we need to spread class consciousness, and what they heard was we need to dress up in a bunch of like guerrilla warfare gear with like an AK-47 and go banging on people's doors, talking to them in Russian or something. Like it was,
Also,
and
sounds kind
funny
of
enough.
fun.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
It sounds fun.
yeah, right. It does sound fun. but probably not the best optics. But
Yeah, no,
it's not
definitely not.
impossible to go knocking on doors to spread communism. I just did it. Fuck, what was it? Last week. We just did it last week,
Based.
right? We went, knocked on doors, handed out pamphlets, talked to people, told them about different things that we were doing in their community. And we didn't need to use the spooky C word. We didn't need to use the scary A word. We just told them what we were doing and asked them if they wanted to get involved, and they did. So it's not like these things are outside of the realm of possibility. It's just you need to do it in a way that's not abrasive to normies. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's so funny that Mao is just like fucking both of us in our organizations. We need to stop reading now.
Dude, he's so good. It's such good stuff. I really enjoy reading it. And I like what you were saying too, because like Mao really does have like a lot of things that appeal to me, which are very anti-hierarchical, and he talks a lot about like the dialectic and trying to find ways to solve problems and stuff like that. I have like a few minor disagreements with like his ideas when it comes to dialectics, but man, the theory is solid. It's good stuff, and it works. It clearly has worked in the past. So
yeah, it's proven. It's proven. It literally works. You know, which is always very attractive in a socialist theory. You know, yeah, that's really cool. You know, actually, I wanted to ask on the question of hierarchy and authority, and this is something that I'm really trying to, because actually I made a mistake in my Socialism 101 video, and the first one, where I kind of strawmanned anarchism a little bit, and I want to get a better understanding. I want to get a better understanding of it. Exercising authority over the bourgeoisie. How do you feel about how? And I maybe not just you. How would anarchists generally feel about this? I mean, actually using like an authoritarian approach against. I mean, because I think this is one thing that Mao says in particular, that we talk about having a democracy for the proletariat and a dictatorship for the bourgeoisie, as in repressing the bourgeoisie and democracy and freedom and free speech and everything that you could ever want for the proletariat. And the peasantry as well, especially the lower peasantry. Did you have any thoughts on that, or maybe if you have?
Like I have a ton of thoughts on that actually. Like I can go through the complicated side and talk about a little bit about the dialectic that Mao laid out. First, I'll talk about that first because that's the complicated thing, and I'll get that out of the way. Then I'll summarize in like an easier format.
Please.
So basically, when Mao lays out the contradiction within capitalism, he says that there's basically the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, and within whatever system that you have, you always have that internal contradiction. And the idea is basically, from what I understand, is basically the one side will be using its power to dominate the other. That's kind of like the class contradiction, right?
Yeah.
The bourgeoisie uses its power to dominate the proletariat. The idea is that eventually those two things will flip, and the proletariat will have the dictatorship of the proletariat and dominate the bourgeoisie. Now, I necessarily think that is the way to achieve a negation. Now, a negation is basically where you take those two dialectic, whatever you want to call it, opposites, and you come to a new, you come to a new system, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, the negation of that isn't just replacing the dictatorship with the proletariat. I think the negation of that is to get rid of that system entirely, that system of domination through capital entirely, and create a new system where we don't have that, where we don't have a hierarchy at all. Or if we do, it's a level hierarchy that spontaneously erupts when necessary. Hopefully that made sense. I'm just barely getting into that side of the theory. So that's kind of like my take on the theory aspect of it. But when it comes to like real life, real versions of like how are we going to do shit, I think that the major problem between what anarchists and communists call a state is we have a completely different definition of those two things. When a communist is talking about a state, they're usually talking about that dictatorship of one class over another. anarchists are talking about state, they're more or less talking about a group that has a monopoly on force or power that is able to dictate to the entire country or the entire population or whatever. So when we're reading Lenin, say, and we're looking at what was his one on the state now? I can't remember.
State and Revolution.
State and Revolution.
That's the big one.
Yeah. So when we're looking at Lenin and he talks about the state and revolution, he basically talks about how, oh fuck, now hold on, I'm smoking weed and I'm drinking now, and now you're asking me to I'm going to turn into Ricky here for a second. Okay, so basically what he's talking about is the I know, right? Amazing. he basically what he's talking about is taking the tools of the state and using the tools of the state against the capitalists, right? So that's using the military, the police force, the school, that sort of thing. Yeah. Anarchists have no problem with that, right? Basically. We have no problem with using the military. We have a problem with using the police. We don't want those, but we have no problem with using the military. We have no problem with using the schools. We have no problem with using different aspects of the state, right? But we reorganize them in a completely different way. So the military isn't organized from the top down. It's organized from the base up. The same thing with the school and that sort of thing. So we don't have a problem with using what some people would call authoritarian methods, because it's not really authoritarian. Violence is an authoritarian method. It's just a tool that can be used for various different purposes. The same thing as education, all of those sorts of things. It just depends on how that hierarchy is structured rather than what the tools are that they're using to accomplish them.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. No, it does. It makes a lot. To be honest, it seems like a lot of the disagreements are very terminologically based. Rather than actually like in practice. I mean, I think there's a lot of work that we can be doing, like like in mass organizations, a lot of work together, and I think there's probably a lot of agreements. I know historically there's this, there's that, there's whatever. One of the people in the chat actually asked specifically, I think that they want blood. They started asking about like the Black Army and the Bolshevik putting down, and Macdonald and all the sorts of stuff. That whole fucking thing, but
right,
yeah, and like there was some pretty fucked up stuff that happened there, and so yeah, there is that like historical stuff, which we can't have that again. we can't have that again.
No, but like those are points where we need to learn and grow, right?
Yeah,
like obviously
totally.
There were mistakes made in when it came to the Black Army and that whole thing, and there were massive mistakes made
right?
during the Spanish Civil War. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like there are clearly, right? But in every system there are major mistakes. Those are all in the past. We need to think about something new for the future. Clearly, we're not in the same position as we were before, right? So. And even like a lot of people like to say, oh, well, even social democrats, you can't listen to anything that they say because they killed the communists or they killed the anarchists in Germany or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, but we're all different people in a completely different material conditions in a completely different system, right? So like, let's look at things in a modern way and see what we can build rather than just looking at all of the ways that we destroyed each other in the past and trying to rehash that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's going to be really different, like depending on the material conditions, like within which you find yourself. I mean, there are, of course, like as we can see right now, like there are more progressive social democrats, like we said, like Latin America or something like that. You'll see progressive social democratic movements, like Bolivia and stuff like that. I don't think that they necessarily have the same kind of antagonistic contradiction with other people on the far left that other people might say they might. So yeah, I mean, it's different depending on the material conditions within which you find yourself. So yeah, I think we definitely need to be looking. Yeah, we need to be making concrete analyses of concrete conditions. I think it's really important.
Absolutely, yeah. And it kind of like it feels like this is a weird analogy, but it almost feels like stumbling upon your grandparents' music and finding out how cool it was, but like nobody ever told you about the music. So like then you do things with that music that people would never assume that you could do with that music because it's from a different time period, right? It like we're kind of doing similar things to what our forebears or whatever you want to call them, the people that came before us are doing or were doing, but we're doing it in kind of like a remix style that has to fit this kind of time period. if we don't do it that way, then like we're literally just going to make the same mistakes again and again and again. And that's nonsense.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, the old Einstein, the misattributed Einstein quote of repeating the same thing and expecting different results. The definition of insanity. That whole thing. It's not. I don't think Einstein actually said that, but people attribute it to him. So anyway, it sounds better. It sounds
Yeah.
it sounds smarter when you say that Einstein said that. But anyway, he did say why socialism. He does have text on that, so at least we have that. I just realized we're 20 minutes in, and I don't think we actually did introductions. I've got a bunch of questions taken down.
People know who we are by now.
Well, I'd hope so. I'd certainly hope so. Would you like to? Well, I mean, would you like to? I mean, maybe there are some. Maybe there's some tankies. Maybe my tankies are watching this, and maybe they haven't checked out your stuff before. Maybe if you're people from your channel, maybe you're checking this out as well. So maybe we should just do a quick little introduction and say hello and introduce yourselves and all that kind of stuff. Would you like to introduce yourself to the comrades in the chat and the audience who are checking us out now?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Eron. I host the show Re-Education on YouTube, youtube.com/deadheadanimation for no reason. I basically try to teach about anarchism and communism, and sometimes I delve into the little bit more theatrical stuff on my channel, but for the most part, I try to stick to the education stuff. And lately, we've been trying to do a lot of taking the theory that we learned from socialism and putting it into practice. So I have a couple on the street videos, a couple of interviews, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I hope that a lot of people are learning stuff. And whenever I get stuff wrong, I hope people are coming in and telling me how I'm wrong so I can kind of fix the problems and go forward.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love that humble collectivist approach of just being like open and putting your opinions out there and allowing the collective to absorb them and correct, if necessary. I mean, this is something that I've done as well and that I've had to experience quite brutally recently. I've had to say, fuck, I was wrong about this. I fucked up. I was
it hurt
before.
The only way that you can be right is if you find out that you're wrong. So
yeah, absolutely,
it's the only way.
Yeah, and you sort of arrive at this process through that collectivistic process, through a dialectic process of engaging with other people. There is kind of a back and forth, and I think it's really important, and it can be kind of individualistic. I think for people to pretend that that's not part of the process, to pretend as though they have all the answers and they were always correct and they had always been at the conclusion, because like nobody has. We're always learning, we're always growing, we're always developing, and it's always nice to see people who are open and have a little bit of humility with these kinds of things, because fuck, life will make you humble even if you don't want to be, even if you're an arrogant dickhead like I have been historically many times. Life will knock you on your arse time and time again and make you humble and make you realize how fucking little you know. It's like that thing, like whenever you start learning about something, you start studying something, you realize how fucking little you know about anything. It feels like what's the thing? It feels like we know more and more. We know less and less about more and more. Like the more you learn, it's like it feels like you realize how little you know about fucking
That's
everything.
exactly right. Yeah. The more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know. Yeah. That's so true. I say that all the time too. Like, it's such a true statement. And like, it's very, very frustrating to me to see people that make bold statements online without having fully read any of the information behind it or without knowing what they're saying.
Yeah.
And even I make some statements online, and afterwards I have people come in and say, hey, you said this with like, you said this very authoritatively, but you are completely talking out of your ass. Why did you do that? And like sometimes yeah, right. And it hurts your ego, and you're like, oh shit, I fucked up on the internet.
But it's always there.
It's the internet. What's that term?
And it's always there. It's permanent. You can't erase it.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's there forever. Exactly.
Someone's gonna back up.
On my channel, if I fuck something up, right, my audience is quick to point it out, but they also know that I'm human and I'm trying to teach them things as I'm learning things, right? And that's a big theme within my channel, is that we're learning together, sort of things.
Yeah.
So if other people have learned something that I didn't learn, then they tell me, right? And that's the really cool thing, like you were saying before, about the very communalistic, socialistic way that some of the people on left tube, I don't know what you want to call it, but some of the people that are
Oh,
on the left that are
getting
on
into it.
YouTube have been able to do. Sorry?
We're getting into it.
Oh no,
No, we're not gonna fall into the rabbit hole of shy talking other so-called left wingers on YouTube. We're not gonna.
I don't even think that we can say bread tube anymore. I think that it just needs to be censored anytime anybody mentions the word. It needs to have like a 5-foot perimeter around every. Like it's just not good.
Oh man, you're
Let's
just
never
asking
speak of
for
it
trouble.
again.
What you?
Yeah, the B word. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love
It's
it.
sad because like I love like all the like almost all the creators, like I love them all, and then like
Yeah, most of
everybody's
it.
just like everybody hates each other though.
Yeah. Fuck.
Whatever.
I feel like everyone should just stay the fuck off Twitter. To be honest, I feel like
Yeah,
it has the worst. Like people who you think are like amazing and you get on really really well with, and then on Twitter, I don't know, just the way it's set up, with like retweets and snarky, snappy little comments, like you're incentivized to be a fucking dick, to be a smartass, to have a hot take, to just be really, really abrasive, and it's so fucking toxic, like.
it is. It's so toxic. Like your therapist will tell you to get off Twitter, man. Like it is such a fucking toxic place. You should not like it. Nobody should be on Twitter, honestly, unless you have skin like 5 feet thick. You should not go on Twitter. If you go on Twitter, don't ever look at your mentions. Just tweet something random and then leave. Bury that shit behind like a wall of other shit. Like
New
just don't even think about it. Yeah.
Just post like little videos of cats or something like that, or little raccoon videos, stuff like that. Just wholesome shit.
You know what? I use Twitter for what Twitter is used for. When I go to the bathroom and I got to sit down for like 3 or 5 minutes, that's when I go on Twitter. That's the only time you should go on Twitter. Don't think about it like it's not your life. Get off of Twitter. Nobody actually gets news from Twitter. That's the other thing too. You get hot takes from Twitter.
Yeah, shit. You really don't get news, because even if you do have, if you share a link, if you try to share a link, hey, check out this really crazy thing that's going on, like in fucking Honduras now, or so whatever the fuck it might be, they don't fucking spread it around. They don't share it. They don't fucking tell, because it's like, because they want to keep everybody on Twitter. They're not going to even show that link to anybody. They show it to like what 10% of your followers. Meanwhile, if you have like a fucking 2-line hot take calling someone out for some shit, everybody and their dog is going to see it, and there's gonna be.
It's ridiculous. But it's like that's the game, right? Is like we're so incentivized to eat each other all of the time because that gets clicks and that gets views and that gets like. But everything else that you do that would usually get clicks and views, right? Like talking about a protest in Honduras or like whatever, like things that are actually important. All of those things are so disincentivized. You can't even post a YouTube video on Twitter anymore without having them hide the fucking thing.
Yes.
I know tons of sex workers who are put on like massive like restrictions every time they try to post anything. They get flagged. Like Twitter is the worst for that kind of thing. If you want mainstream opinions, you can go to Twitter and you can find them. If you want to get sold shit like through ads, you can find that on fucking Twitter. Anytime that you actually get an interesting leftist opinion, usually the fucking Twitter hate mobs are in there so fast destroying that person. Like, it's just the worst. It's funny because it like makes me nostalgic of like the YouTube comment section, which used to be literally the fucking worst, and somehow Twitter made it worse. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, but what the fuck it did, it's just one thing capitalism does, it innovates on the worst fucking parts of our humanity.
That's right, yeah.
And now
pumpkin spice Twinkies, the best capitalist innovation.
Oh my god. Surviving the nuclear fallout, yeah. Okay. Come here to me. There's a bunch of questions, and comrades have been waiting around for like over half an hour. We've been shooting shit, having fun, and we could probably do this for like another 3 hours just talking shit. But, are you cool with answering a few questions from the chat? Maybe
love to, yeah.
Great, cool. A few comments and stuff like that. Yeah, wholesome vibes only today, guys. Let's just take it easy. Let's have some fun and chill out. We're not gonna do any bullshit, And actually, Jose Maria, one of the regular comrade of the stream, how are you getting on, comrade? Good to see you. Says we might have disagreements with anarchists, but we're still comrades in the fight against capitalism. And I think that's a really important comment, a really important statement, because like anarchists are progressive anti-capitalists. This isn't some bullshit fucking weird traditionalist so-called anti-capitalism. We actually have the same enemy generally, and sit like proper like anti-imperialists. So yeah, we got very many of the same goals, and there's a lot of work we can do together. So
Oh, totally, totally.
so you love to see it. You love to see it. Now here's a question. There's a bunch of questions. I saw one recently from Jess Daya. Paul, can you ask? I have heard anarchism is a more, in quotation marks here, Western ideology. Does he agree or have any historical notes for people like me who don't have, excuse me, who don't have a clear history on the topic? So maybe if you want to talk about like anarchists who maybe aren't from like the typical like Western world or anything like that, or other movements outside of the quote Western world and all that kind of stuff, because I think there are some important ones that we should talk about.
Oh yeah, like pretty much any time that you've ever had a communist uprising or socialist uprising anywhere, there's always been a major anarchist contingency. We had mentioned before that there was the Black Army. They came about in the Ukraine. They were part of the what the Soviet Union ended up becoming, and they were a very strong military force that were able to take over a lot of land at first. Eventually, they ended up being crushed by a much larger army, but yeah, they definitely were not from the West. There was also anarchists in China. I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that some of Mao's teachings actually came from some of the anarchist teachings early on. And probably one of my favorite examples is the CNT-FAI in Spain. They came about during the Spanish Civil War, and they were able to defeat fascism in their country. They took control of a massive territory as well. They did really, really well, improved standard of living for a lot of people in different ways, but ultimately, again, were defeated by a larger army. So yeah, there are a lot of different, and then also there is Rojava, Syria, which some people say that they aren't necessarily anarchists, that they're more of like Bookchin style communalists. They're either way. I think that they're very similar to anarchists in the way that they do things. So I think that they're a good example of it as well. But the way that anarchism is portrayed in the West is yes, it is somewhat of a Western idea in that like a lot of countries haven't completely gone anarchist. Obviously, that hasn't really happened. And in the West, anarchism definitely has like a strong holdover from the punk scene, which some people really love. Some people don't think that it's necessarily helpful. Then also anarchism has a strong correlation with people just assuming that it means chaos and lack of control, that sort of thing. And American politicians use that all the time as a straw man as well. So yeah, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that the reason why a lot of people see anarchism as being more of a Western movement is because the word communist leaves a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths in the West. And when they hear left libertarian, that seems even like so much more palatable to them. So they're more likely to embrace those sorts of belief structures. When you start saying words like dictatorship of the proletariat and that sort of thing, it turns a lot of Western people off. Hey?
It sounds horrific.
It sounds bad. It doesn't sound good. That's like what I was saying before about Mao and the contradiction, right? Is like the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, why do we need to oppress the capitalists is my question. If we take away the stick that they're using to beat everybody over the head with, then they end up being just like the rest of us. If we use the military to stop them from using their friends.
You just re-described state and revolution. You literally, this is it. We just literally, it's so, because what you're saying there, taking away the stick that they used to beat us with, and that is the exploitation of our labor. That the stick that they beat us with is their exploitation of our labor. Their role as capital. Take away their role as capitalist, make them proletarian, eliminate class. Boom, everybody's proletarian. Good to go.
Yeah, and I would go further and say that the physical stick that they use is money. I would say that money in and of itself is the tool that they are using to oppress people. Like right now, it's being used as nothing more than a fun token for most of them, but it's a serious need for most people on the ground level. And that's why most people's lives are striving towards only ever trying to achieve or to get more and more wealth or money, rather than trying to make the world a better place or trying to stop global catastrophic climate change. None of that is important because we're not incentivized to care about that shit at all. Like nobody gives a fuck about climate change unless it makes some sort of profit. And that's why you end up seeing things like massive solar farms or massive wind farms becoming this thing that like, oh, if we only had massive solar farms, everything would be fine. And it's like, no, actually, because the amount of energy that it takes to create a solar farm or a wind farm is far more than what it would actually be able to produce, at least with older standard equipment. And at the end of the day, why wouldn't we be trying to reduce the amount of energy that we're needing to use rather than trying to use a bunch more energy to try to industrial revolutionize ourselves out of the fucking problem that the Industrial Revolution brought us into? We need to think about things more holistically and more ecologically, and we need to start working and using our planet and our cities and our communities as things that should be able to function together rather than things that function as, separate parts. Sure if that makes a whole lot of sense, but basically what I'm saying is that we need to start making community gardens. That's the solution.
That's a pretty good solution.
Draw me on that.
We got one or two. We've got a couple of community gardens around here which we're working on. So I can get behind that. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you on that front.
I like how I broke down this like very complicated like thing, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, I'll just get to the end point. Community gardens are the only way to fix things.
I love it.
That's the only way. I actually have somebody in my comment section that always does that to me. They're like, Aaron, how on earth do you think that just handing people food is going to help anything? And I'm like, for fuck's sakes, man, if you don't have community built at the beginning, how on earth do you think that you're going to get people to go and march on the Capitol if everybody thinks that you're a crazy socialist?
Yep.
You have to build communities. You have to get involved. You have to start talking to your fucking neighbors. Don't be weird. Go hang out with them. Have some beer. Go watch the football game. You may not love it, but just do it and talk to these people. You need to build communities if you want communism. It's basically the root word.
Definitely, yeah, 100% agree. And like, we really need these parallel structures existing alongside the bourgeois state. If we ever want to have a successful handing over to socialism or communism, I mean, and if we don't build that, then it can't happen. People are just going to fall back onto the bourgeois state and bourgeois state structures, and so it's going to make things a lot more difficult. So we got to build, and we got to not be fucking weirdos, as you said. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, what was it? Black Red Guard is the one that like I heard was the first one to say that, and I'm funny. Like, oh fuck, I'm a weirdo.
Oh shit!
I mean, I've always known. But...
I always thought so, but I wasn't 100% sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and now it just reaffirmed it for me, and I'm like, fuck. Now I gotta go watch a football game.
Shit, I gotta normalize. Yeah. Okay. There we go. We go off on a rant, a 2-hour rant. I think that did a really good job of taking apart the anarchism as a Western ideology point. I think that's where we started.
Sure. That's right. We were answering questions.
Yes. We're not just talking shit and hanging out and shooting the shit. That's not what we're doing here. That's right. We're gonna vibe with people and answer some questions. Okay, cool. So let's see if we can get through a couple more. And here's a fun one here from Blade Valent, who says, Paul, I have a question as well. How do you all stay positive? I really have trouble not becoming a doomer. Would you like to take that first?
You can take it first if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
I talked a whole bunch.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I would say that the best way of staying positive is to stay connected to the masses, to be engaged in revolutionary movement and revolutionary struggle, where you have something to look forward to, which is socialism and communism. If you don't have that, if you're not part of a revolutionary organization, then you're going to feel things are going to look very bleak. But and actually, speaking of Black Red Guard, he has a fantastic video on this, on revolutionary optimism and proletarian morality and all these sorts of things. And understanding that the future looks bright because we're gonna have communism, we're gonna have socialism, we will build these things. It's a necessity. Okay, this is definitely gonna happen. The internal contradictions of capitalism make it a necessity, and it becomes a necessity, or it becomes something that will happen through our action. You know, and so you actually need to be out there organizing and fighting to make that happen, and we will. So don't worry about that. But that's what I would say. Stay connected to the masses, and be engaged in revolutionary organizations, in mass organizations, in your unions, your workers' unions, your tenants' unions, your parties, whatever organization is suited to your particular tendency, and get out there and stay connected to the masses. Always stay connected to the masses. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree, and I would say that yeah, again, like the revolution and a new system, a new world only comes through our work, through our effort. And if we're not fighting for it, then we're not going to ever achieve it. You can't just assume that things are going to all fall into place. Socialism isn't inevitable, right? The fall of capitalism might be. Every system has been born, evolved, grew, and died, right? So capitalism will be no different, but where it goes, we don't know. It could lead us straight to fascism. It could lead us to communism, socialism, hopefully, or it could lead us directly to the death of the entire world. So, yeah.
I mean, that's technically a stateless, classless society, isn't it? Extinction.
True. Oh my goodness. I guess primitive communism actually existed for billions of years then.
Prim gang, back to monkey.
That's right. Radical. But like to bolster what you're saying, when you do direct action, when you do mutual aid, when you get involved in groups and communities and stuff like that, and when you actually see the efforts that you're putting in achieve results, holy shit, dude, seriously, that is one of the most fulfilling things that you can feel. It gives your life direction. It gives you something to be passionate about. And one of the main things people always ask, like, what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose? Why are we here? There isn't one purpose. It's whatever you make of it, obviously, but it's to achieve a goal that you have set. And if you set the goals, right, to stuff that you're able to achieve, and you don't take on more than you're able to, and you work to achieve those goals, then you're going to feel a lot more whole in your life. And you're not only going to feel more whole because you've done something that benefits you, you've done something that's benefiting everybody. Right? It's not like an individualistic, selfish act that you're trying to just gain more wealth for yourself. It's going out there and helping other people and making their lives better, and in turn making you feel better and also achieving a real goal. So it's like mutual aid of the heart, right? Like you're helping them, they're helping you, and you're all feeling a whole lot better about it, because really at the end of the day, we need to get back to our roots. We need to get back to our communities, to our families. We're so disconnected from everybody all of the time, especially now, even worse because of COVID, that we need to get back to that. And that's the way that we fix things, is we work together. It always has been that. The many hands make light work. We're stronger together.
Love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I just saw a couple of questions. I'm just going to take them in here quickly. The next question that I saw that came up recently, there were a couple of questions asked before we went live, and I will come back to those in a moment. But I just want to quickly knock out one here. Andre Rook 97 asks thoughts on the DPRK. Do you want to take that? Do you have any thoughts on the DPRK that you would like to say first?
Sure. I can tell you about all I know about the DPRK in about like 5 seconds. There is not enough information about DPRK in the Western world for me to make a real good, proper statement on the entire thing. I think that the entire conversation has been so polluted with the Western narrative here that I don't know what is true and what is false. And I stand in solidarity with the people of the DPRK. I have no idea what the government is actually like. So if you know more about it, please inform me. I'd love to know.
Well, maybe I'm a little bit harsher than some people. I will say, first and foremost, I do support it. I support its role against imperialism. I do support it as a progressive role against imperialism generally. Do I think that everything's perfect in the government? No, absolutely not. I don't support their what I would consider revisionist take on Marxism-Leninism. I consider it to be a rightist deviation that ultimately takes more of an idealist perspective. This whole business of they kind of negate class struggle. They kind of go back to, it's no longer is class struggle the driving force of history, but rather the ideas of men are the driving force of history, and it kind of gets into some strangely kind of great man theory kind of territory, which makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And you can actually you can do the reading, and you can read up a little bit about this, and it's a little bit strange, to be honest. I wouldn't be super comfortable with it. And but yeah, generally, look, I do support them. I do support them as an anti-imperialist force. Do I think they're socialists? No, I do not think they're socialist at all. For me, there are three categories for how we can judge whether or not something our country is or is not socialists. The three categories are the political, the economic, and the transformational. And I want to say, first and foremost, transformational is so important that we don't talk about it. Transformational is actually transitioning. Socialism is the transitional stage between capitalism and communism. That's how we see it as Marxist-Leninists and Marxist-Leninist Maoists. And so if you don't have the transitional stage there, then it's not socialism, as far as I'm concerned. If you're not progressively moving towards the abolition of the commodity form, if you're not progressively moving towards the abolition of wage labour, and moving towards a stateless, classless, moneyless society, then it's not socialism. And just from that transitional perspective, the DPRK removed communism from their constitution in 2009. So for me, that's a pretty clear trajectory that they might have been trying to move towards communism at one point, but now they're no longer. That's no longer really a goal. They kind of put that on the long thumb, as they say, put it on the back burner. So transitionally, no, I wouldn't say so. Politically, maybe you could say it. I mean, some people could say like it's a dictatorship proletariat. Okay, maybe there's an argument there. And economically, maybe there's again, as you said, it's very difficult to get concrete information. But you see, I think there's a big problem when it comes to trying to look at these countries objectively, because these countries are under so much fire from imperialism. They're under attack from imperialism so much that when you go to defend these countries, you have people who have very extreme responses. They want to say everything that's said is incorrect, and so they'll sort of present these countries as though everything's perfect, And same thing with Cuba as well. People say like Cuba's perfect, it's a utopia and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that doesn't actually necessarily really reflect what's going on. It's not necessarily a true depiction of what's happening there. So yeah, so I'd have some reservations there. I say I need to look into it a little bit more. But yeah, generally I do support it, but I wouldn't say that it's socialist. I don't believe there's any socialism. I don't believe that there's any genuine socialist countries right now. That's just my personal opinion. Like there has been socialism. There has been socialism in the USSR. Stalin's USSR was socialist. Mao's China was socialist. Albania was socialist under Emperor Hoxha. And there are a few other places where it's a little bit debatable, but yeah, I don't think there's any socialism right now. Unfortunately, there are progressive anti-imperialist forces, and we should support them definitely. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. People, if there's some reading that they want to recommend me, please go ahead and let me know. Just put some recommendations for me. Put it in the comments, and I'd love to read a little bit more about it. But that's where my head's at right now on it, and that's my general thoughts on it right now.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I know I kind of rambled a little bit there. I didn't actually get into the political or the economic that much at all.
Like that's super interesting, because like I never get like anybody's actual opinion on the DPRK, because like I said, it's so muddled in bullshittery that you really have a hard time finding out any real good information on it. I think Hakim had some really. Was it Hakim that had something on the DPRK that was really good? I can't remember, but
Azure Scapegoat was a good one as well. Actually, Azure Scapegoat, I remember.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was. Yeah.
Maybe Hakim. Yeah. I can't remember if Hakim did one on the DPRK, but
I can't remember either. Like I said, I was smoking and drinking. Now my brain's fucked.
Yeah, you and me both.
Watch Trailer Park Boys?
Yeah, I love Trailer Park Boys. I got the Ricky reference earlier on straight away. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's pretty much a staple here.
I love it. Well, cheers. I'm gonna have a little drink to that.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I
So
just got to mention that I've been drinking pirate rum all day.
oh,
That's right. Now, I
amazing.
probably that you'd probably pay more just for the cool graphic art and everything like that on there. But like a true pirate, I didn't pay for it. So
You
cheers to
pirated it.
that.
Great. Cheers.
Cheers to
Fantastic.
all of
Ah, brilliant! Love it, absolutely love it. Okay, thank you, Andre Rourke, for the question. I hope that was a satisfactory answer. I didn't actually dive into the political or economic side. I really should have. There's actually a lot of stuff that should be debunked about the DPRK. It's like this whole idea that like it's a monarchy and stuff like that, which is just clearly bullshit. There's so many lies. There's so much bullshit about the DPRK that needs to be debunked. So maybe I was a little bit too hard on them. I don't want to seem like I'm too hard on them. I do still support them as a really progressive anti-imperialist country. So yeah.
As a fan, I'd love to see a video about that.
Maybe.
Seriously, that'd be interesting.
I need to do a lot more research into it before I be. But well, anyway, let's see how things go. Do you? Here's a fun one. Here's a fun one. D Doc says, do you believe in the idea that true communism never existed in human history? There's never been true communism.
Yeah, I mean, a stateless, classless, moneyless society. So, if that's what we're using as a definition, right? Stateless, classless, moneyless society.
Primitive communism, I suppose.
Then we absolutely did have that for a long time. Primitive
Tens
communism
of
was
years,
exactly that. Yeah. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I believe there was also a proto society that happened to come up just in the Mediterranean just before Greece, I want to say, but I'm not 100% sure on that, and I can't remember what they were called. So I'm not going to talk about that one. But
I want to Google that now. It sounds really interesting.
I know. I can't think of it off the top of my head, and I wish that I could. But there's a lot of skepticism on it because, gotcha. From what I understand, they have a very ancient text that nobody's been able to decipher really. So they can't really know the full scope of this civilization and what exactly their structure was. But it may have been more egalitarian. In any effect, still at the very beginning of history, of human history, we had primitive communism for a very, very long time. I would even say that native cultures in North America had a type of primitive communism as well. Some of them did, not all of them. But as far as modern societies go, we are so hung up on trying to, like the way that I look at it is it's almost like this like terminal reformism that we've like fucking dug our feet into when it comes to any kind of revolution, where it's like we can revolt, but we can only go this far because any further than that, and that's too much. And I think that when you're doing a full revolution, when you're changing the entire economic and political structure of an entire country, like what a better time, right? Like if you're going to remodel the floor, like why not also paint the walls at the same time, make it look all nice and everything like that. Obviously that's not entirely possible because you know, we have to think realistically, what can we achieve? How can we achieve it over time? That sort of thing. But yeah, as far as like modern society goes, I don't think that anything has really come to a real actual stateless, classless, moneyless society outside of a few small groups that formed spontaneously, and even those still had major problems.
Yep, really good take. I can't add anything to that. I think that was really comprehensive. I agree. Primitive communism, yes, definitely, but not communism in the sort of sense that we talk about it as communists, as the sort of final stage of abolishing class society, I suppose. So
Sure.
After post-class society.
Like I think I thought it was really interesting when you were talking before about the DPRK that you were saying that you haven't seen any like that you don't think that any socialist countries exist right now.
That's right. Yeah.
Like what do you mean when you say socialist in that way? Like they're not trying to achieve communism? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So So there's the three aspects. It's one thing to say that like it's transitional because like look if you take a historical materialist conception of world historical development, if you look at if you go back and you look at like primitive communism, then you get to slave society, then you get to feudalism, then you get to capitalism, then socialism, then communism, and so on and so forth. Everything is technically transitioning towards communism. Everything is technically transitioning very fucking slowly. you know.
Yeah.
But I would genuinely say that socialism is a transition between capitalism and communism, and so I don't see any societies that are actually progressively on the path to abolishing the commodity form. And I know that's a very fucking like ultra left fucking armchair kind of thing to say, but I really don't see people. I really don't see any. There's no country right now that I see is actually committed to literally just abolishing, like let's just say exchange value or price or whatever it might be, just producing for use entirely, trying to remove wage labor. And all of the general hallmarks of a stateless, classless, moneyless society without sounding like a pretentious douchebag. There are other aspects.
Right.
I said the transformational was like one aspect of it. But no, I wouldn't say there's any countries that are that I'm 100% convinced are actually doing that. And that might just be people can just say there's like the kind of a scapegoat when a lot of people come to this question. They'll say, well, the material conditions make it impossible. They render it impossible. You can't be doing that within the material conditions within which you find yourselves.
Because until the entire world is able to go socialist, then we can't have socialism, sort of deal. Right?
Yeah, well, we can't have communism. Yeah, we definitely can't until we defeated imperialism globally. It's impossible.
So I hate that argument. Because I think like there's no reason why you can't build certain structures within another structure. Within capitalism, there's no reason why you can't build small socialisms. That's how capitalism was created in the first place. It created itself out of being coming from mercantilism. It was a bunch of very small groups of people that were trading money and that sort of thing with each other, and were able to be in the right place at the right time when the fall of monarchy happened, and that's why the bourgeoisie were able to come into power. But it doesn't just happen that like the entire world happens to need transform to capitalism for capitalism to exist. Small pockets of capitalism existed, just like small pockets of socialism, I think, can exist.
Yeah,
and obviously the material conditions would apply big time.
It's kind of a tricky one. It's like you could have like, for example, like when we talk about like socialist economics, worker cooperatives are socialist economics in a sense. You do have that worker ownership of the means of production. When we talk about like the economic aspect of socialism, like we're really talking about putting it as I say, centralizing everything into the power of the states, so it becomes public property. So private property becomes public property, and public property becomes communal property. As we transition to higher stages within the socialist transition period. And cooperatives is a big part of that. Collectivization of farms and all these sorts of things, and like they can happen to a limited extent under capitalism as well. They can actually happen under capitalism. You can have worker cooperatives under capitalism. You can have nationalizations under capitalism, but, and this is really important, if you don't have the political leadership, and this is why I talk about like there's the three aspects, there's the transformational, the economic, and the political. If you don't have the political aspect, if you don't have what we call like a proletarian leadership or working class leadership, the dictatorship of the proletariat, to actually see this through, to actually follow this through to abolish class, then it doesn't make any difference, because ultimately it just bolsters capitalism. It just supports capitalism and maintains bourgeois rule. And of course, as we know, capitalism leads to monopolization and has this tendency towards monopolization. And we have all the same problems. So you can have worker cooperatives under capitalism, and it can feel kind of socialistic. It can feel like a pocket of socialism, but it doesn't solve the anarchy of production. It doesn't deal with the problems of the booms and bust cycles. It doesn't deal with the problems of the falling rates of profit. As we move towards like automation, it's totally unsustainable. And we can kind of say that they're like pockets of socialism, but they aren't actually leading towards communism. So this is where it becomes it's tricky, because if you don't consider like the political as well as the transformational, then, and you just look at the economic, then you're kind of missing out on a much larger picture here. And this is why I say you need to satisfy all three of those. And I don't want to be like too dogmatic and say like there are certain points when you're going to be more focused on one aspect of those than the other, and maybe some aspects will be less so. And I know, like, for example, if you look at like Stalin's USSR, for example, and I know this for the anarchist comrades who are watching this. I apologize. You don't have to like Stalin. You don't have to like Stalin. You really don't. But it's inarguable that it was socialism under Stalin, especially post NEP, the new economic policy in the USSR.
Sure.
It was inarguable that that was socialism, and they were they were transitioning towards communism. However, the transitional aspect of moving, collectivization and moving in the direction of cooperatives and states concentrating production into the state and so on and so forth, that was more or less finished around 1936, and there was kind of a stagnation in terms of the transformational aspects that occurred after that and up until like Stalin's death. So like the transformational aspects, it wasn't really it kind of there was a little bit of stagnation, but politically and economically it was still fully socialist. So yeah, I think it's fair to call it socialist in that regard as well. If you look at Mao's China as well, post 1956. There was a period in Mao's China, of course, you had like the big revolution in 1949, but then really it's really after 1956 that we see proper socialism. Before that, it's more like state capitalism. But even after that, there are still elements of capitalism within that. It's not like a pure, perfect economically socialist system. There are still there are communist and capitalist elements within this system, but it was progressing towards communism. And you do have that transformational aspect. You do have proletarian leadership. And so it satisfies all three of those categories. Unfortunately, there's nowhere right now, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Fuck, I would love to be wrong. Jesus Christ, I would fucking love to be wrong. But there's nowhere to my knowledge right now that actually is doing that right now. There's nowhere to my knowledge which is actually satisfying all three of those categories right now. One of the comrades in the chat there has asked me to speak slower, so I apologize. I will try to speak slower. From here on.
You have so much good information that you need to get it out right away.
I'm excited, and
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I realized that like I've left out so much stuff, and I don't want stuff to be like left open to misinterpretation. I don't want this to be interpreted like I don't support these countries. I don't want it to be interpreted like I don't support these progressive anti-imperialist countries. I do support them. I'm just not under any illusions as to their economics, to their economic policies, which I would not really firmly consider. Like I still support Cuba, of course I support Cuba, no doubt about it. But can we say it's socialist as such? I don't think so personally. People can disagree with me. Yeah, that's cool. I'm not sure. Do you have a different take? Do you see places as socialist or communist or anything like that?
Like that is a really tough one, and it's actually something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Because I've been trying to really nail down the difference between modern socialist states and democratic socialist states. So. For instance, China versus Norway, or whatever you want to do, whatever you want to talk about. And I think that the main difference between, say, a China versus a Norway, right, is that the goal of the system is to hopefully achieve socialism at one point in China, or communism, sorry, in China. And like, but you probably know more about China than I do. I'm not like super well versed on everything.
I've been grilled about China recently. I've had to learn so much about China.
There you go. Yeah, you probably know way more about it than I do. This is just my layman's understanding of it, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, right, like I think that when I'm talking about socialism, that is such a fucking broad term. It means everything.
That's
it means
true.
Literally.
It's got about 20 meanings. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes when I look at it, and I was trying to lay it out dialectically because I've been really on this dialectical kick lately.
And the Maoist arc is intensifying. I love it.
It's so good. Anyway, so but I've been looking at it, and I noticed the main difference.
Can I just and I'm so sorry to interrupt. I have been recently since I have been embracing MLM, I keep getting called a red anarchist. That's actually no, I don't keep getting. It's like one dickhead who keeps saying this. I keep getting called
a red anarchist. I don't even know what that means.
I don't know what the fuck it means either. I think it's like just one of these like revisionists like are trying to like insult me for being a Mao enjoyer. But I don't know. It sounds kind of fucking base to me. I don't know.
Okay, but here's the thing. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like whatever, call me whatever you want. You can call me a banana anarchist. I don't give a shit what you call me. Like, let's talk about the actual policy. Like, that's all I give a shit about. I don't care what you fucking call it. Call me a tanky, call me a fucking anarchitty. I don't care.
A rose by any other name would smell just as sweet, as they say.
Absolutely. Here's the thing, right? Is that, like, the reason why I said that I love Mao is because I really enjoy the way that he is able to lay really complicated topics out in a very easy to understand way. Like I said, not in every bit of his work, right? He has a vast volume of work, but in certain books, he's able to actually really lay things out very easy to understand way. Right? That's
so much
also why
stuff
I love.
there, yeah.
What's that, sorry?
There's so much practicals. You know, I was just reading on the correct handling of contradictions amongst the people there yesterday and today, and it's just so practical. It's so there's a thing that we do, right? Which I think just like this is almost like fucking like communist Jordan Peterson shit, where he's just like, don't treat contradictions amongst the people as necessarily antagonistic. You know, it's not necessarily antagonistic. These contradictions between there's an antagonistic contradiction between, of course, between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. It's antagonistic. Right. It's a serious issue that needs to be dealt with accordingly. We shouldn't treat the contradictions amongst the people, amongst ourselves, as though it's necessarily like we're handling our contradictions that we may have with enemies, you know, with proper enemies, with class traders and so on and so forth. And I think that's a really important thing that we can take forward from that. I can't believe I just called Mao fucking communist Jordan Peterson, but here we are.
That's the hot take of the night. But like I was saying, that's why I really like Mao, is because he's easy to understand. But also at the same time, that's also why I really like another author who I'll shout out right now, is Alexander Berkman, who's an anarchist author, who wrote the book The ABCs of Anarchism. If any of your followers want to go check that out, again, it's another one of those books that are super duper easy to understand. It's like your Socialism 101 series. It breaks it down in ways that everybody can just understand without having to do all of this extra reading and all of this extra thinking and bullshit. The thing about communism and anarchism and all of this socialist bullcrap is that we need to make it accessible to people, or else they're never going to be able to involved with it. That's part of the problem with like Marx Capital, right? Is that it's just such a dense work. Like, what is it, 3.5 volumes?
Oh yeah,
I think he died before the last volume was finished or something like that. But it's so much reading, and it goes through so much that it's really good stuff. But it's completely inaccessible to some single mother who has to take care of 5 children or whatever. Right?
And you know what else? You know what else? Like, you're fucking reading Capital, and he's writing all these crazy languages. He's writing in about 5 different languages. It's like the normal working person can understand like fucking Latin and French and just all these different languages. You're just like, are you fucking serious, Marx? You couldn't have written it in one fucking just one language. That's just one fucking language. Just choose it and stay with it.
Yeah. But, and I mean, like, and I don't think that it was meant to do this, right? But when you write in such a dense way, and it turns into this thing where you've written so much stuff, it makes it really easy for certain individuals who want to use your work, but to use it in a bad way, to be able to cherry pick certain things that you've written. And be able to extrapolate off of that and be able to say things like, oh, well, the only way that we can do X is through X, right? One of the original things that a lot of the socialists were saying was the only way that you can achieve true communism is by having capitalism first. That's something that I've heard a few people say. Or the only way that you can achieve true communism is by taking control of the state, because I think that Marx had mentioned that somewhere in the Critique of the Gotha program or something like that.
Yeah, he mentioned it a few times, and actually, it's kind of a weird one, because Marx kind of it's kind of hard to, you know. Actually, I don't know. Maybe you saw this video. This has been like a big discourse debate on left wing, you know, YouTube and these kind of spaces, and Marx kind of pulled back from it. There's this statement he has in the Communist Manifesto where he's like, we need to centralize all productive forces into the hands of the states. And then, like in a later version of it, he writes like a little footnote where he's like, actually, we don't really need to do that. No, he didn't say we don't need to do that. He said something like, it's going to be different depending on different material conditions. So he kind of has a little bit of an ambiguous position with regards to this question of like authoritarianism and libertarianism, and kind of, especially from this kind of like anarchistic perspective. If you're looking at it through that lens, you'll find there's some levels of ambiguity, and there's shifting over the years, sometimes back and sometimes forth, and so on and so forth. So you're not going to get a clear answer. You're definitely not going to get a satisfactory answer on Marx's position on whether or not state good or state bad, and in this kind of way that we would like. We would like a nice simple answer, but it's hard to discern.
What was the question that we were trying to answer? Because I think we've gotten so far off topic.
We've just gone off into space. I don't know. Fuck, I don't know. I literally, I don't even know what we're asking. I've deleted the original question. I think we answered the question. I delete the questions once we've gone through them. So hopefully
we've answered so many questions by answering that one question that it's just unbelievable how many questions we've answered so far.
So many high level ideas have been.
My brain's in recovery mode right now.
Brain's recovery. Oh my god, that was me after a stream I had with Joshua and Milfoy Paul recently. Like I couldn't handle it. Like I was reeling for days after. I was just like, my whole world has been shattered. My bourgeois liberal ideology smashed.
Don't worry, I assure you, none of that's going to happen from this stream.
If I even remember this stream.
Yeah, we're just gonna shoot the shit. That's all. It's fine. It's good.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Okay, here's a cool question. Actually, it's a really interesting, and this is a high level idea question. So, but you've got your thinking cap on. I think we can fire into. Don't look which the great comrade has said. Paul, does Aaron have any views about anarchist economics? If state planning is out and money as a common unit of account is out, any thoughts about matching production to consumption? Any ideas on how we handle anarchist economics?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. So you can't. And there's actually never been a way to do that.
What do you do?
You can't What's that, sorry?
What do you do?
Well, okay, so think about it this way. There's no real way to know how much work it takes to produce 16 jackets, right? There's no way of knowing that because each person is going to work at a different rate. They're all going to work at a different speed. They might do things in a different way. So there's no real way of quantifying every individual person who is so totally vastly different from one another into this single individual number that says in 10 minutes you're able to produce 0.25 of one jacket.
What about there's no automation? What about? I'm sorry, I know I'm complicating things. That's what. But I'm thinking fully automated luxury gay space communist, and I'm thinking like 10 minutes for this machine to produce, and I know we can get into the labor theory of value question and all sort of stuff, but
sure.
Do you think that this, for the future, that these kinds of contradictions can be resolved? Do you think that they're... I'm sorry, I cut you off. You fired.
Oh, no, that's fine. Like, I'll get to that. You know what? Here, I'll write that down.
Yeah, automation would be a good one to address here.
So
that'd be cool.
I'll get to that in 1 second. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, there's no real way that you can go from the amount of effort or work or whatever it takes and quantify that into a certain amount per hour to measure the amount of goods being produced from any individual. You can try to ratio it. You can try to come to a sum, like a relative amount, but you'll never be able to figure that out 100%. The way that anarchists look at this is that you don't really have to, because we don't think about it in ways of having a central economy that is a planned economy that starts from a central body and organizes outwards to say, this is where so many sheep go, this is where so many buildings go, this is where so many loaves of bread go. It's not like that. Works is through something called gift economics or through sharing economics. where essentially every community works together to find out what that community needs, and then works with that community and the broader community to bring in the certain resources that they would fit that community. So, for instance, say you have a grocery store, right? You don't need some central planning committee to tell that grocery store how much food needs to be brought there. You can find that out through the people that come to that grocery store. If a certain number of people come to that grocery store every month, we can track that very easily digitally, find out exactly what they bought, what they want to buy, and how much of it. And they're able to, on the fly, as things are being taken away, be able to order more. They're very, very similar to the way that we do things now. The only difference is that we take away the barrier of having money stopping people from being able to acquire the goods that they need. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, what will you do? Everybody will just go to the grocery store and take everything inside the grocery store, and then there will be nothing left in there. And I can answer that in two ways. First of all, it's better to have groceries at people's houses than inside of a grocery store. And also, you have free access to tap water right now. Most of you do, at least. And you're able to walk up and get tap water anytime that you want. You don't usually fill up 10,000 jugs of water and store them inside of your basement. You usually just get tap water as you need it. With gift economics, inside of a gift economy, you provide the labor that you are able, and from that labor, people are able to produce goods and services inside of the system. And then out of that, you're able to take what you need. So it fundamentally goes by from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Yeah, that's basically how that works, is that you don't need to have whatever it is, like credits or bullshit. You just go in, you get the stuff because you need the stuff, you bring it home, and then the next day you go to work because people need you to work inside of a functioning society. All of that would be organized through contract and agreement, just like billions of dollars worth of agreements are done through capitalist businesses today. Remember that the majority of all negotiation all across the entire world all happen through contract and negotiation. This is the exact same thing. It goes by the axiom of the free association of free producers, which is exactly something that Marx wanted. It's something that all communists hopefully want.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, is for us to be able to have a system that does that. So that's why we want to create a gift economic system. And we can even do that within capitalism right now by creating dual power structures, creating free stores, creating housing cooperatives, worker cooperatives, all of these things, even though they exist within the capitalist structure, they are a parallel structure to capitalism that will exist when capitalism inevitably crumbles, either from its own complete uselessness and incompetence, or through some sort of revolution.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you trying to get through that. It was a difficult question, and there's
a very difficult question. I hope that everybody was able to follow along.
Yeah,
that I explained that properly.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm gonna watch it and be like, "It's it's however you do it. Just do the thing. Fuck it. Whatever. Okay.
Just do full communism. It's fine.
Just do the communism. Stop fucking around and just do it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a spicy one. Are you ready for a spicy one?
I'm ready.
My
body.
It's your body's ready. Good. It's not necessarily a sectarian one, but it is a spicy one. It's a spicy one for people in the US anyway. I don't know if it's spicy in Canada. I don't know if this is a controversial thing, but people in the US get very upset about this. Comrade Goose asks, at Re-Education, what is the anarchist position on settlers by Jay Sakai? So decolonization, settlers, settler colonizers, all this kind of stuff.
Okay, so I think that I read Settlers. I read at least part of it, and I don't think I read the whole thing, so I don't want to make a full analysis of it. I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically the argument is that the people that came to America and to Canada and that sort of thing were primarily bourgeoisie class, and they already started from a place of being petty bourgeois or already bourgeois, and everybody
Yeah,
that's in the West.
I'll just do a
Is
quick.
that is
It's similar to that. Yeah, my takeaway from reading it was that not the people who came were not necessarily bourgeois when they left, and in fact, like for example, like even like Irish people who would have went to like what's now the USA, and they would have been escaping things like famine and stuff like that, and had a bit like a horrifically oppressed life in Ireland, but they came across and they sort of merged with this new this new concept of whiteness. And
right?
the title of the book is let me see, Settlers: The Mythology of the White Proletariat. And I think
Mm,
the point was the big okay, so people see that title and they think it's saying that there's literally no white proletariats, and I think that a couple of people have explained this to me. My takeaway from reading it was that the white proletariat actually formed a labor aristocracy, so a privileged stratum of the proletariat, and so they were very comfortable, and they may not necessarily have the same class interests as the colonized people. That's the takeaway that I took from it. I've had other comrades who have
yeah,
come on and explained this in more detail and had different takeaways from this. For example, I had young Simba came on, and young Simba, I believe their perspective was very much that there actually wasn't a white proletariat, that they weren't even a labor aristocracy, that they were actually like petty bourgeois or even above from there. For me,
interesting.
that's a complicated one, because the objective relation to the relations of production are worker or capitalist. It's not like a subjective thing, it's an objective thing, and so I would probably disagree with that analysis if that was a take from it. But actually, then another comrade, Deadman Animations, came on and explained that it was more just that if you're part of the proletariat, then you're not fucking white. Whiteness in itself is this bourgeois ideology, this colonizer ideology, and it's an illusion that people kind of see themselves as white. I mean, if you're fair skinned, you're not actually white, and it got into like white supremacy and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like butchering it. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining it right now. But these are the different takeaways that people have had from reading that book, and I think that like I've given you like three different takeaways, and like I've spoken
Yeah,
about this on the stream like three times with two different people, myself and two other people, and so like three people who read the book came away with three very different perspectives of the book.
sure.
And then like people who have read the book, like, or haven't read the book, have no idea. They just see the title, and so it seems to stir up a lot of very extreme emotions based on that title.
Yeah,
And yeah, I don't know. I've got questions. There's definitely some issues with the book. I know that there's misquotations of William Z. Foster. There's actual like misquotations which take him out of context and actually manipulate the words he used to make it seem like a little bit more nefarious than it seems to have been. Even though there definitely was like a lot of racism and horrific stuff in the labor movement in the U.S. It seems like there are some quotations which maybe were a little bit like even unfair, even beyond that, to a point where it was maybe a little bit too far. And yeah, so it's definitely problematic, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's worth engaging with. I do think that there's an interesting question raised there between what I would consider to be intra-class conflict among the working class. For example,
mm,
like if you're fair skinned or dark skinned, and you're like whether you're colonized or a colonizer or whatever it might be, there are sometimes antagonistic contradictions within our class based on those kinds of things, based on the colonial question, which I would have seen played out in Ireland. Within, like, for example, you look at like the loyalists versus the republicans. The loyalists would have been the people who uphold like Britain. They would be the descendants of the planters who came over to Ireland, especially in the 1600s. They came from Scotland. They were given all this place. The Irish people were kicked out, and so they would be like, what you might loosely call like settler colonizers, and then like the indigenous Irish people have had this kind of antagonistic relationship. And if you look at like the troubles in the 70s and stuff like that, there were massive sectarian conflict. Let's just say there was massive sectarian conflict between these different strata, you know, and it's not even necessarily that they're like actually different classes. In many cases, they're both working class. Like we're both working class, but there is one of those groups, this labor aristocratic group, has an interest in upholding this colonial system, the conditions as they exist right now. And that would have been like, for example, the Protestants, the Unionists, the Loyalists, as they say in Ireland, because they would have been materially benefiting from this system. They would have been treated favorably, and so on and so forth. There was a lot of oppression. Think about like apartheid in different countries. Think about like apartheid, South Africa, and stuff like that. That's an extreme example, but I'm just to help people understand what I'm talking about here. Certain groups are treated better in certain circumstances, and they have a vested interest, or they feel they have a vested interest in maintaining the present way of things, the way things are right now. They have an interest in maintaining that. And so you had counter-revolutionary fascistic organizations, loyalist paramilitary organizations who were fighting back very, very viciously against the revolutionary Republicans who were fighting for a free and independent 32 county Socialist Republic of Ireland. And they played this extremely counter-revolutionary role. And so again, you're kind of seeing this settler colonizer versus indigenous people playing out in a different way. For me, it made a little bit more sense. It was a little bit easier because it wasn't complicated by the question of race as we understand it. Because like both people are like fair skinned, and like you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference between someone who's like a Protestant and a Catholic in Ireland. So for me, it was never really taken as like a racial thing. It wasn't just like the shadier skin necessarily indicates your class or anything like that. So that was how I always understood the question. You know, some people have a vested interest in upholding this system, and so that's how I looked at settlers. I kind of understood it as there are people who are in a position where they benefit from the current system, the current way of things, and so they have a vested material interest in upholding the system, and they may, not always, but they may be more inclined to play a counter-revolutionary role. So that's kind of what I took from it. I don't even know if that's fucking correct, but that's that's how I sort of perceived it. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
So, like I said, I didn't read the entire book, but when we're looking at the beginning part of colonizing America and when the United States was first formed, what we're basically looking at is the collision of two different systems, right? We
Mm,
have capitalism on one hand with the employer-employee relationship, which definitely did exist when they were starting to colonize America.
mm,
And then you also had the slavery aspect of it, which was a completely different system where people were bought and sold and used to perform labor. And those two systems, from what I understand, worked in tandem with one another at the beginning of the United States, all the way up until when slavery was abolished. So I believe that you do have, from what I understand, when people were moving to the United States, they had a deal set up that they would be given X amount of property for every one person that they had moved down there with them. So every person, like employee that they had, probably slave too, I would assume, that
mm,
they were able to move down, and they would get more land for more people that they brought down. So then that says to me that you definitely do have an employer-employee relationship of just white people, right, that are employing other white people. And then you also have black people who are slaves in that same system, who are of a completely different tier than any of them as well. I might be wrong on that, but I think that's what I basically see from the beginning part of the United States.
mm,
So I do believe that there was a class division, but there was a much larger class division between the slave class and the bourgeoisie class.
mm,
And yeah, both of those, both capitalism and slavery, are different forms of domination.
mm,
One more overt than the other, more oppressive than the other, really more damaging than the other. But both of them are different forms of oppression, different tools that people use to basically make profit out of human labor. So, I think that both existed, and I think that the premise of the book makes sense. But if there's contradictions within it, I don't know because I haven't read it myself, not fully.
Yeah, it's quite a long. It is quite a long book, so it's it can be difficult to get through. Right? It's I don't know. It's one of those books where there's like 1,000,000 words on each page. It's not like I think it's only like 400. It's like 400 pages long, but there's just like so many words on each page that it takes like I don't know. Well, it took me anyway a really long time to get through it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's not that big of a book or anything like that. I just like I have 900 different books and I'm so fucking busy all the time that I just didn't have a chance to finish it. I started it and I'll finish it eventually, hopefully.
Absolutely. We'll check back in then. We'll do another stream and we'll
sure
generate some controversy based on that there. Yeah.
The sad thing is that I was asked a question about this before a few months ago, and my answer was about the same.
Yeah.
Like I still have
reading. I have to go to the bathroom. I'm so sorry, Aaron.
Oh, that's totally fine.
If that's okay. Cool. Can I ask a question actually for you, which is an advisory question that you might have for the tankies in the chat here to help educate the tankies, as well as people who are just kind of left curious or who are new to the left. I think this would be a good question to answer. Earlier on, the Engels list, this is before the stream, asked Paul and Aaron, what anarchist works would you show to someone who hasn't looked into anarchism yet? So, like, what are the big texts, or it doesn't necessarily need to be a book, but any big texts or like films or documentaries or things that people should look into to really start to understand anarchism. Someone who doesn't know anything about politics, you want to teach them a little bit about anarchism. What would you direct them to, and what would be useful? I'm going to run to the bathroom. I might actually get you to re-summarize for me after as soon as I get back, but I'll be back in a moment. Is it okay with you?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so that's a really, really great question. Like I was saying before, Alexander Berkman is a wonderful author who's able to break things down very, very simply. I suggest taking a look at the ABCs of Anarchism. It's also called What is Communist Anarchism? And it's a book that I actually turn back to and reread every couple of months just because I think that it's really, really important. And it just breaks things down in such simple form that it's just, it's wonderful. Another one that I would definitely suggest checking out is the Bread Book from Peter Kropotkin. Everybody always says to check out the Bread Book. The Conquest of Bread is the actual title. And it's a really, really great book. It goes through a lot of information about how anarchism is a pretty good idea. A lot of other people have also suggested somebody named Malatizia. Unfortunately, I'm not very well versed on their work, so I don't really know a whole lot about that, but I definitely have heard that they're great as well. And someone that I hold near and dear to my heart is Murray Bookchin, who actually came about rather recently. He basically, I think he passed away in the early 2000s, if not in the late 90s. And he gave us a lot of really, really interesting work when it comes to hierarchy and when it comes to social ecology and ecology in general. Ecology is basically living within a system or a community in a very holistic way. Being able to basically produce and consume and engage with all of the people within your community without having to get a whole lot of extra forces to interfere with that. So instead of having like Walmart or whatever, you'd have more local shops and that sort of thing. It's a very complicated subject.
We do books,
but yeah. Oh, sorry, you're back. Hey.
Sorry. I snuck in there. We doing Bookchin at the moment?
Yeah, I was just talking about some Bookchin. He isn't necessarily, or he passed away. He wasn't necessarily an anarchist at the end of his life, mostly because he really had a problem with lifestyle anarchists.
Oh, that's actually a really good essay, but I really enjoyed that essay. Social anarchism versus lifestyle anarchism. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a good one. Yeah, and that ended up turning him off from anarchism, but he comes up with a lot of really great ideas. And one of his ideas was actually adopted by Abdullah Aslan in Rojava, Syria. and turned into the democratic. Sorry, the
Whatever.
communalism. Holy shit!
Oh yeah, well, democratic confederalism, isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
Mm.
Hold on. I have drank entirely too many of these fucking things, so now I'm.
Well, you're drinking that, you're drinking rum, you're smoking weed. I mean, come on, man, it's all right.
Hey, hey, and it's also like 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the
Well,
afternoon.
you know, like that old cliche they say, it's like it's 5 o'clock somewhere. You don't even need to worry about it because it's like it's nearly 10 o'clock here. It's 9:37 in Ireland,
Oh my goodness,
so you're good to go.
I'm keeping you past my bedtime.
I'd usually be snuggled up at this stage, you know, my poor
Yeah,
wife.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, brilliant. Actually, and related to this question, right? Related to this question, here's a
Yeah,
good one. Well, maybe tangentially related. Vladimir Lenin, which is a funny name. This person is called Vladimir Lenin, and it's got like it's got
yeah.
a picture of Vladimir Lenin in a super suit. A question for Aaron: what is something MLs often get wrong about anarchism, and what would you want them to know? Transitional stage. That's the big one, isn't it? You've
Well, that's
corrected.
one. Yeah, that is like
You
that was
corrected me on that.
the
Yeah.
we were talking about before. Definitely the
Yeah.
transitional period. That is a big one because a lot of people misunderstand anarchism and think that we just want to achieve anarchism immediately, and there's nothing between like the capitalism and anarchism, stateless, classless, moneyless society thing, and that's just like not like a feasible scenario. It's almost impossible to just go from capitalism to anarchism. There's always going to be a transitionary period. It's just we don't believe that there should be a transitionary state.
Mm.
A period is just fine. We're going to need to kick my microphone there, but we're going to need to take time to reintroduce people to different ideas. But that's the whole idea about building dual power structures, is that we're actually creating a lot of the base groundwork for those systems right now. So when people eventually get to the point where we can eliminate the state, we can do it through the sheer force of our will rather than having to march on the Capitol and haul out all of the politicians by their ears, though that's probably going to happen anyway. But
Mao Star.
it's Minecraft. We don't want to pull on anybody's ear in real life.
Landlords,
But
watch out.
yeah, but like that's a major concern because like obviously all of this stuff takes time, but we think that we should be fighting for and working towards building that structure right now, rather than trying to build it afterwards. And also building it afterwards. Yeah, like all of this takes work, all of this takes effort. It's going to take a long time to do, but the only way that we can change society, Bo from the Fifth Column says this a lot, the only way that we can change society is if we change thought, is if we change the way that we think about things. And if we no longer think about things from a top-down hierarchical perspective, if we think about things in relative terms to, say, the Soviets, right, workers' councils or community councils, then people are going to be less likely to be attracted to that sort of top-down hierarchical structure, and they'll want to have full autonomy of their lives and livelihood. So they would reject that sort of system, even if somebody tried to put it in place. So that's what we need. We need to build dual power. That's what I think.
Have you looked into the CPP MPA, the Communist Party Philippines and New People's Army in so the Communist Revolutionary Movement in the Philippines? Because it strikes me that everything that you're saying that we should be doing and we need to do, they're doing that. That's exactly what they're doing. They've basically got their own like counter societies built all across the country, and it's so wild. Like they've got their own councils, like they've got their own democratic forums. The people don't, in many places, the people just don't even bother with the bourgeois state. They just go directly to them, to the communists, to the communists, to the mass organizations and stuff like that. It's really amazing, in some ways, I really do feel like MLM, the Maoist kind of path, really does resolve a lot of these concerns that arise both, within MLs and within anarchists and stuff like that. I really do think that it's something that everybody would be really curious about and would benefit from studying. I don't know. Like, I can send you some stuff if you're interested.
Oh,
I can send you some reading and some videos and some documentaries. But it's been studying the communists in the Philippines has been one of the most mind blowing things for me. It's just on another level. It's everything that you talk about plus everything that I talk about, like in one, and it fucking blows my mind what they're doing over there. I believe they're the most advanced revolutionary forces in the world right now. Some people disagree. Some people say there are other organizations that are doing better work. But for me, they're just the perfect synthesis in terms of where we should be in 2021.
yeah, you got to send me some of those links because I want to know more about that. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like we can't be. Here's the thing. Like I was saying before, you can call me whatever you want. You can call me a banana anarchist. You can call me. You can call me. I don't give a shit what you call me. I don't care. All I care about is, at the end of the day, the ideas that we have need to strive for a stateless, classless, moneyless society. And I think that a lot of really important work has been done to build up the reasons why we need to do certain things in certain ways. I think that Mao comes up with a lot of really important work when it comes to on contradiction and when it comes to guerrilla warfare. I think that Lenin came up with a lot of really important work when it comes to just basically outlining how we need to use the state or the apparatus of the state to be able to achieve certain things. But there's a really important aspect of this that I think comes from the anarchist perspective, where we talk about the abolition of hierarchies when they aren't necessary. Always evaluate hierarchies. We need to look at democracy not as an electoral democracy, but as a more of a consensus democracy sort of thing. And if we're able, as well as liquid democracy and ranked choice voting, all of those, we need to use more forms of democracy rather than just one. And I think if we're able to use all of these different criticisms and take them seriously, because it does nobody any good if you just hear a criticism and you think, oh, well, whatever, they're from a different ideology, it doesn't matter. I don't need to listen to that criticism. No, fuck that. You listen to every criticism, you take it seriously, and you think about how we can find a way to solve those problems. Because if we do that, then we've come up with something truly revolutionary, truly new, and we're actually going to be able to do something better than before. We have to learn from our past. We can't just keep making the same mistakes. So yeah,
Scientific
if it means
I love it.
What's that? Sorry. Yeah,
Scientific
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Do that. Yeah. And if it means learning dialectical materialism, which is a super helpful tool, then do that. Right. And if it takes learning a little bit by listening to Paul, listening to me, listening to you, Gopnik, you listening to all of these other different people, right? Then that's what you need to do. But you need to get a good understanding of all of these different things and try to think of something that will work going forward, right? Because we're not going to be focusing on the past. Socialism isn't about being reactionary and trying to get to a past where we did things better, right? We're trying to move towards a future. That's the whole idea, right? And that's where we need to be moving towards right now. And I think that's why we need to be doing more stuff like this. Yep, talking to people who we ideologically apparently agree with, but really, in our modern day, do we really? I don't know, right? Let's let history decide that.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's one for Revolutionary Dragon asked just recently now, Paul. What do you think, for both of us, I assume here, what do you think of the idea of a Marxist-Leninist or Marxist-Leninist Maoist state with anarchist organization on the ground that can work with the state and keep it honest? Now, I think I'm going to defer to you on this question, because I mean, this idea of the anarchist organization on the ground that can work with the state and keep it honest. I suppose you as our resident anarchist, I think you could probably do a better job of explaining if whether or not you think that that's feasible, and then maybe I'll jump in and see whether, because I think I would like it. I would like that to happen. But what do you think?
It depends on what you mean by state, right? When we're talking about a state, usually we're talking about a way of organizing people towards a goal, right? Or organizing people in such a way that it functions to benefit society and not benefit a small group of individuals or what have you. Um, that's what most people mean when they say the word state. But when we have conversations between Marxist Leninists and anarchists, we have a major contradiction between what we even mean by the word state. So if you're to have an organizational structure that is democratic, fully democratic in a real way, then what you've created is not necessarily a state. You've created what I like to call a form of government. Some anarchists even reject the term government, but it's easier for me to explain it in terms as this is a government in that we're organizing people together towards a certain goal, say that's destroying catastrophic climate change or eliminating the capitalistic structure throughout the entire world. And we can also work towards a certain amount of central organization as well. And when I'm talking about that, what I'm saying is that instead of having a central committee that's organizing how much bread or how much meat or whatever, or how many houses go in every individual place, people on the ground who are living in those places, who know that neighborhood the best, will be able to decide for their neighborhood what kind of thing they need there. But also, we would be able to formulate together, confederate. Democratic confederalism was the word I was trying to look for before, but I couldn't remember it. If we confederate together, right, then we can work to form some sort of agreement or constitution or whatever you want to call it that would allow us to actually create something where we can achieve a certain goal. So if it means achieving stopping global catastrophic climate change or demolishing capitalism all over the world, we can do that. And we can also have the tools of the state, like the military, like the school, like all of those different things, working towards helping people and teaching about socialism and fighting for socialist causes without having the problem of having a central group of people that could and are incentivized to keep and hold on to control. Like I've said many times in the past, and it's an old adage, the means that you use to obtain your object soon themselves become your object. And if you use authoritarian dictatorial measures to achieve your revolution, then at the end of the day, the authoritarian dictatorial measures will be the things that the authoritarian dictators are trying to hold on to. So we want to push that all aside. I don't want to make a straw man and say that the dictatorship of the proletariat is anything like that, but we want to push all of that aside.
In some cases, yeah. I mean, and actually,
in some cases. So go ahead. Yeah, I've talked for a very long time. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. Did you want to finish that off? I cut you off. I do want to come in on that, but did you want to?
No, I think that I got my point across.
You know, I'm so again. Here we go. Fucking Mao pilled again, because that's what Mao said. I mean, you gotta fucking bombard the headquarters. You know, the people need to rise up. The party can become the dictatorship of the proletariat. The party, which is meant to represent the proletariat, can be corrupted and can be fucked up, and the bourgeoisie can enter that, and they can use that and manipulate it and send that down the capitalist road, as unfortunately we saw in China. Which is why we have the situation where we're at right now. But this is one of the central additions that Mao made, is this idea of cultural revolution, an ongoing cultural revolution, the people rising up again and again and again and getting us to communism. This idea that this old idea like the state will wither away, and that actually makes sense, because when we think of like why the state exists, it exists to reinforce class rule. Like we know that, looking at historically, looking at like society and how it is functioning, we know that there's truth to that. But what happens when you have a new proletarian state and that gets subverted by a new class, and a new bureaucratic bourgeoisie or capitalist roaders or so on and so forth? They want to keep centralizing their power. What do? the people need to rise up. The people need to, as they say, bombard the headquarters. They need to overthrow it. And I think that this is where, again, where that MLM really comes in and resolves that contradiction and really gets it back to putting the power into the hands of the people. I mean, there's that thing that Mao said, like, if you want a revolution, then you need to engage the revolutionary masses. It's not just this elite vanguard who do everything. It's the masses. It's all the people together making this happen and seeing it through and delivering that stateless, classless, communist society that we're looking for.
Sure. Like, here's the thing, right? Is that, like, when we let's talk about the vanguard for a second, right? When people are talking about that, what they think of is a group of people that are able to work towards fighting for communist causes. The way that we can do that is not by necessarily forcing everybody to do a certain thing. We can't be thinking of a vanguard necessarily as we're the smarter class or we're the smarter group of people and we know better than all of you. And we're going to tell you how to do communism or socialism. We need to think of it more or less like the stake that's helping a plant grow. Right? We're the stability. We're the ones that have that knowledge, right? Not everybody has that knowledge, but we can work towards helping the people grow towards communism or socialism, but we will help direct them that way. We don't need to force them into that sort of thing. And a lot of people will be able to work with that sort of idea and come to a lot of those conclusions completely on their own if we're giving them the tools to do that. And I think that that's really what we need to be focusing on, is giving people the tools to think in more communist or socialistic or anarchistic ways, and not trying to force our ideology upon them. Because like you were saying before, like, yeah, a lot of those groups can in themselves end up just using their the means of their goal to be their ends, right? A very common thing within anarchism is we talk about how established groups usually eventually stop trying to fight for revolutionary causes and just basically try to fight to maintain their own control over things.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to stop. We can stop that. We have the tools to do it. We just have to implement them. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, that's been true as well. Like, we've seen that time and time again with so many revolutionary organizations who start off as genuine revolutionaries and they become reformist over time. And look,
well, and like a point that Alexander Berkman made actually in the ABCs of Anarchism, which I was talking about before, is he was talking about the Bolsheviks, but like this could be basically anything. After a certain time, right, to achieve the revolution, they used all kinds of like very revolutionary tactics. They used the general strike. They used all kinds of direct action and that sort of thing. But after a certain amount of time, once the once the state maintained control, all of a sudden they made it illegal for you to strike for a certain amount of time. Because they said that, well, who are you going to strike against? We are the representation of the people. So what, are you going to strike against yourselves? You can't do that. But it wasn't really the representation of the people that they were trying to strike against. It was the people were trying to strike against a group of individuals who thought that they knew better. This is Alexander Berkman's way of looking at it, somewhat mine as well. But yeah, they were trying to stop a group of people that thought that they were smarter than everybody else from taking and maintaining control over them. The people knew that they didn't want to have just a signed document, right? A constitution written on paper saying that they had freedom. They wanted true, actual freedom. They wanted to actually maintain control of their workplaces. They wanted to have communal property of the land and not have landlords and that sort of thing. So they knew what they wanted off the bat. And by the way, that jumps into the thing. Like, I hate the argument that everybody always says that, oh, well, the peasants in Russia were too stupid to understand any of this stuff. We had to go out and do whatever we had to teach them. No, the peasants knew what they wanted. They wanted freedom, right? Just like every person on earth wants. And I think that that's something that they fought for and something that they should have been able to hold on to. But But anyway, I'm getting off on a rant.
Oh yeah, no, this is all we do. This is, this is the point of these streams, having fun, talking shit, going off on tangents. I mean, this is great, and I'm learning a lot as well, and I really appreciate it. So, so thank you for that. Matt W says elimination of the state. I think this is a question here. Let's say does elimination of the state mean replacing necessary institutions of the state with bottom-up democratic equivalents not based on power hierarchy? This is a cool question because actually you mentioned this earlier on. And I wanted to ask about your thoughts on this. For example, the police, abolishing the police, all cops are bastards, and yeah, pretty much it's fucked. But if you look at, like, for example, the Black Panther Party and stuff like that, and they had like this whole policing the police thing. You know, you have like people's police forces. You can call them whatever you want. Doesn't matter. You don't need to call it police if you don't want to. But you have like the people, the proletariat. Like, we're ready. We're able to defend ourselves. You know, community policing, some sort of community protection stuff. You know, like, what are your thoughts on that? You know, these sort of as Matt W says and phrase it, these bottom-up democratic equivalents not based on power hierarchy. I'd be really interested to hear your perspectives on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good way of explaining it. I think that's for a normie, that's basically how we try to sell it to people, right? You have to sell everything to people, but that's basically the way that we try to push it on. To push it is basically, yeah. Things would stay sort of the same, but instead of having people that are top down dictating to everybody else, everything is organized from the bottom up, and we create hierarchies when necessary. So sometimes hierarchies are necessary. For instance, if you're building a barn, you might have one guy there that's built several barns, and 5 or 6 guys who have built one or maybe never. And that one guy that's built several has more knowledge, more information, and everything like that. So he can basically work as a boss, right? Or a manager or an organizer, better yet, and organize those people in a way that they can build a barn efficiently. Those kind of hierarchies come up all of the time, but there's no reason why we should take the guy that knows how to build the best barn and also assume that he knows how to organize the best society. Yeah, every one of those hierarchies are done and created on a very specific basis and eroded after they no longer are necessary. And ones that are continually necessary, we want to keep them as democratic as possible so they're constantly circulated and have a new batch of people coming into them all of the time, so we don't have anybody holding on to a certain amount of power. As for the police, now, the police are a structure of the state right now that Lenin and others would use as a tool of the state to subvert and use against the state. Now, that isn't necessarily it isn't necessarily the case that anarchists wouldn't do a similar thing, except for we don't really want to have police as a structure of, as they are now. Basically, the way that police started in the first place in the West is they basically were birthed out of slave patrols, and they are a group, an organization that is funded by the state that is meant to uphold capital and property relations. That's not something that we want to have. Like you were saying a moment ago, Paul, you were saying that basically what we want to have is community organizations, community policing, or community defense organizations that are able to work towards maintaining a certain amount of, not order, but making sure that people don't fucking murder each other, right? We want to maintain that sort of thing. But at the same time, we don't want to make it so that one person or one group of elites have control over that force and are able to use that force to maintain their dominance over everyone else. You see, it would be a very interesting, it would be a very clever grift, wouldn't it, if I was able to somehow trick you into believing that all of the things that you produce are now mine, and then create a whole class of people that are supposed to uphold the law that says that those things are mine, right? It's all part of the big capitalist grift to hold on to their power. And that's something that we don't want to have. If you want to call that a fucking police force, I don't give a shit. Oh, sorry about that. If you want to call that a police force, I don't give a shit, right? You can call that whatever you want. As far as I'm concerned, It's called a community defense group, right? Organization. But they would maintain and they would do the same sort of job as some police do right now. And obviously other things that the police do, like maintaining like making sure that people follow traffic laws. If we decide to still keep certain traffic laws, there would be a different group that handles that. If there was a group of people, if police are mainly handling domestic disputes, we would have people that handle that. It's just basically the police have too many fucking jobs. The guy that deals with hostage negotiations should not be the same guy that tries to get a cat out of a tree or tries to deal with a yappy dog, because there's a good fucking chance that he's just going to shoot the dog, right? We need to separate those jobs. There needs to be many different jobs, not just one job that the police do. So, and this also follows into, would we abolish prison? And yeah, we would basically be able to abolish prison in several different ways, but there would still be a certain amount of people that are completely unreformable that you can't just ship to Siberia. So you have to put them somewhere. So you want to call that prison, call it prison. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are just some things that, I mean, some people are extremely harmful to society. Ship them Siberia. I try to imagine like how we kind of conceptualize this. Do you have any thought? I mean, we are kind of getting into idealist territory here of just kind of imagining, but do you have any idea like how we could otherwise deal with these people, or put them in a way, or maybe cut them off from the rest of society? I think this is probably going to change with technology as well. I mean, there's probably going to be like little things where you can, I don't know, like you can probably just put like a fucking microchip in somebody's hand or something like that, and it'll just zap the shit out of them if they try to leave their apartment or something. I don't know.
See, like I don't think like punishment isn't going to help anything, right? Like
Yeah,
I don't
right.
think punishment has ever been a useful tool to stop people from doing heinous things. The thing is that people do terrible stuff because they have incentive to do them. A criminal is going to commit crime because they have no other choice. If they're not able to get food or rent or bills, if they're not able to pay for those things legally, then they're going to find ways to pay for them illegally, or they'll die. Right? It's, if you're given the choice between going to jail for a couple of months if you get caught, or dying, you're going to choose the going to jail possibly in every single instance. And it's the exact same situation when you're looking at a billionaire, right? A billionaire isn't necessarily a wholly evil person. They don't just wake up at the beginning of the day and think, I'm going to do evil today.
Curly mustache motherfuckers.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a cartoony way of looking at things. It's not how reality works, right? They are incentivized to do whatever they can to increase profits and reduce costs.
Yep.
That's just the incentives that we have. So if we take away, like I said before, the stick that everybody is using to beat each other over the head with, if we take away the monetary incentive from everything, if we eliminate that capitalist proletariat divide by abolishing money, in my estimation, then we will be able to eliminate this whole thing where people are able to use a certain amount. Like it'll help a lot of things. But as far as crime is concerned, when people are given every opportunity, right, not just the right, but the opportunity to obtain all of the things that they need, like housing, like food, like proper medication, all of these sorts of things, you will see crime go down exponentially. You'll see it go down to almost nothing. And really, when we're looking at law and crime, the biggest crimes in the face of the earth are lawful crime. They're done by capitalists when they steal your surplus value from your labor, or when all of these sorts of things. So yeah, when it comes to trying to find a way to reform all of these people that are committing crimes, first of all, if we rearrange society so people didn't have the incentive to do crime, then we would solve that problem in a big way. There are still going to be the Ted Bundys of the world, or the Al Geens, or Ed Geens, or whatever the fuck you call them, that do things just for the sake of being evil, right, or being terrible. But that's such a small amount of people that we don't need to generalize and say that the majority of people would ever act that way. We already know that the capitalists keep a reserve army of labor for us to maintain, so they can maintain unemployment rates. So we are always scared that we might become unemployed and replaced by somebody that doesn't have a job right now that might be better than us. Right? We already have that.
Well, I mean,
where was I going with this?
No,
go ahead.
I really, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's really important. What you're saying is that we need to abolish the conditions which give rise to these problems, that these crimes and so on and so forth. So this is no longer as big of a deal, you know. And
yeah,
and
and if there's
really
one
important.
or two people out of the population, right there, if there's still a Ted Bundy out there, then, and there's nothing that we can do to him, like we can't, like I said, ship him off to Siberia. We would probably have to maintain some sort of prison system, and not a prison system in the way that we have it now, but some sort of place where we put these guys, where we try to reform them if we absolutely can. But if we can't, we also can't have rapists and murderers and unrepentant people like that roaming the streets. Like anarchists, like I've said before, are a hippy dippy bunch. But you can't mistake our kindness for weakness. So we're not going to allow that to happen.
Thank you, comrade. I appreciate that. There was a question a little while ago, which I just want to address. Ben Redwards says Sheldon Wolin. I'm not sure about this person. I don't know who that is. Sheldon Wolin and John Ralston Saul think anarchists can't keep the lights on. Bit rude. And that a revolutionary party modeled after Lenin's Bolsheviks is crucial to overthrow the corporate state. Do you have any thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? That seems a little weird.
I do, but my back teeth float right now, and I have to run to the bathroom. So.
Oh, that's okay. I'll vibe. I'll vibe. I'll grab a few other questions. You go.
All right, hold on to that question for 1 second. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem at all. Come on, guys, chill. Keep it cool. Don't ask rude questions. Don't be shitty. We're vibing. We're having fun. There's no blood. We're not doing blood here tonight. Lincoln asked a little while ago. Lincoln asked, "Must all communists be internationalists?" Yes, absolutely. If you have a stateless, classless, moneyless society, that necessarily entails eventually the abolition even of nation at a certain point. It's not going to happen straight away. There's still the national question to deal with until we get there. But absolutely, ultimately, long term, we are internationalists. There are certain circumstances in which being a nationalist is appropriate, such as the nationally oppressed groups. Black nationalism can be progressive. Palestinians, for example, Irish nationalism to an extent. Don't fucking push it. You can get in some weird territory, and some people do get in some weird territory there. So be very careful in the question of nationalism. Internationalists first, but certainly a little bit of progressive patriotism can be okay, and certainly being cognizant of the contradictions that can occur based on the national question, especially with regard to colonized people and so on and so forth. I think it's really important that we deal with these questions and we don't try to brush them under the rug and pretend like there are no national differences and so on and so forth. There are, unfortunately. People are still, of course, subject to all kind of oppression based on nationality, and we still need to deal with that accordingly. So I would say yes, all communists need to be internationalists, 100%. And in certain circumstances, maybe a certain amount of nationalism, a small amount of nationalism. But as I always say, when it comes to nationalism, the devil is in the dose. You know, for an oppressed group, for a group that's going through a very difficult time, a very small amount of nationalism can be a medicine. It can work quite well. But too much, and it's like a poison. It's an overdose. It's terrible. Fuck that. You can't do it. The devil's in the dose. So yeah, great. Thank you very much. Let's take a look here. There's a couple of questions. Oh, I saw a question from earlier on.
Sorry about that.
Oh, here's a question for you, comrade. Oh, wait, no. Before we finish off, let's answer that question, and I'll come to the next question after that. So again, I'll give you that question again, and see if you have any thoughts on that. So, a revolutionary party modeled after Lenin's Bolsheviks. So a Bolshevik party is crucial to the overthrow of the corporate state. It says corporate states. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Okay. So, like, I have a problem with that, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, the Bolshevik Party, they didn't necessarily come into power fully democratically, from what I understand from my reading of it. They kind of came in like they bullied their way in. right? And I don't think that that's necessarily the way to do it. I've been drinking a little bit, so forgive me if I'm a little bit
Me too.
blunt,
That's okay.
right? But I think that when we're talking about the Bolsheviks, I think that the main problem was that they believed that the peasant population was too stupid to understand socialism. And I don't think that that's true at all. I think that the people knew what they wanted. They fought for what they wanted. They achieved a revolution themselves. And then at the end, they were told that they had to follow by this other line, this Bolshevik line. And I don't think that that is necessarily true. And I think if you want more of my where I'm getting this from, again, read the ABCs of Anarchism. But I don't think that that is necessarily the way to go. I do think that a way to go is through things like Soviets, right? Where you use worker councils or community councils that are democratically elected, that are able to fight for revolutionary causes. And I think that we need to work towards making like I said before, socialist ideas a lot more accessible to regular people. Ho Chi Minh, right, revolutionary leader in Vietnam, one of the things that he did was, instead of teaching every individual Vietnamese person what socialism was, showed them what it was by getting them grain when they were in when they had no food. Right? He went out, he used a bunch of people to steal a bunch of grain and then distributed it to the people. And that's a great way to explain to people in a very, very fucking fast way how socialism is able to fix people's problems. And that's why we need to be building dual power structures to be able to show people that socialism works, right? Even in a microcosm, and it'll get more people involved and invested in doing those sorts of things. And when people are ideologically motivated deeply to be able to solve these problems, then you have, just like Mao was talking about in the guerrilla warfare, right? Then you have people that will fight to the end to achieve the liberation of their people, right? So I think that's what we need to be focusing on. I don't know if the Bolshevik method is is necessarily the best way, but it depends on what you mean when you say Bolshevik method, right? We'd have to lay out the policies, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there've been advancements. There've been advances since the Bolshevik times as well. I mean, we don't need to pretend like we're living in like 1970 in Russia. There have been gains since then. It's over 100 years later. We've learned new things. We figured out better ways of doing things. We don't need to repeat the same thing. We learn from them. We learn from them. We see what worked, and what we take what worked, and we use that and bring it forward. And what didn't work, we discard it. We throw it away. We say we don't need to keep doing that. Oh, by the way,
like material conditions.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. What was that?
I said material conditions. That's the main thing.
Absolutely. Explain every question that people have. That's the answer.
Yeah.
But while I was gone there, by the way, I just answered the question. Lincoln asked, must all communists be internationalists? Did you want to speak about internationalism, nationalism, internationalism, all that sort of stuff? Did you want to say anything about that?
I have a video on nationalism. I don't necessarily think, like most, I guess some anarchists or at least some libertarian socialists look at nationalism as being wholly evil or wholly bad. I don't think that it's necessarily that cut and dry. I think that nationalism means a lot of different things. You can have white nationalism, which is obviously a terrible thing. And you can also have different sorts of nationalism, like I don't know what you would call it, but the Irish Republicans are fighting for a certain...
Yeah, like a left nationalism, yeah.
Exactly. And it's not the same thing.
The national liberation struggle,
like and I don't think that anywhere in the socialist fight for certain nations, for instance, like Vietnamese people or whatever, anybody that's being colonized by another group, I don't think that their nationalist struggle necessarily rejects the international idea of an international proletariat. I think that they're necessarily just dealing with the material conditions that they have, and they need to be fighting for a nationalistic goal, right? A goal within the people that are being oppressed, to achieve some sort of status where they're not being oppressed anymore. And then I'm sure all of them would be on board with fighting for an international proletariat. So when you're talking about nationalism on a leftist scale, it's like a conditional thing, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah, gotta be careful with
Yeah,
it. Very careful.
you
with
know
it.
better than I would. Like, I'm an internationalist anarchist, and like I've said before, I'm coming at that from a privileged white boy perspective, right? Where I don't have to worry about a colonized group of people oppressing me. I'm technically the colonizer oppressing other people, right? Because that's what my history is. I'm actually my history is like my history is from Ireland, but it doesn't matter. Hey, diaspora and shit.
Diaspora squad. I'll drink to that.
Yeah, diaspora squad represent. But yeah, like, yeah, that's my opinion on it.
That's good. That's actually a really good nuanced take on it, and I really appreciate that. It's pretty much what I said actually while you were on it. It's we're pretty much fully aligned on that question. Absolutely, yeah. Internationalism first, but definitely if there is a condition of national oppression, then that needs to be dealt with as well. Engels agree with that as well. Engels wrote that thing. In the time when Engels was writing in the late 1800s, he was saying that there's a duty if Irish people and Polish people at that particular time, the oppression of these groups was particularly intense, and he wrote that if the people of Ireland and the people of Poland want to be internationalists, they have a duty to be first nationalists, to break the chains of imperialism in their weak spots, and so that's what it is, like freeing yourself from imperialism, become like, so this national liberation thing can actually be a blow to international imperialism, and so it can actually benefit, it can weaken imperialism globally and benefit the international proletariat for us to do that. So, but I do think that let's absolutely always root these things in internationalism first and foremost, rather than any ridiculous bourgeois narrow nationalisms that people do get caught up in. I'm very hesitant to have this kind of conversation with people who are I don't know. I'm very hesitant to have this conversation with people online, because I do know there are people who kind of take this and run with it to really crazy levels. I do see people taking this and run with it, and then you have people like doing the full fucking socialism with American characteristics, this full fucking stars and stripes shit, but just socialist somehow, imperialism with social democratic characteristics, all this bullshit. And like, I've seen people use the arguments that I'm putting forward within these imperialist contexts, within colonizer contexts, to be used to justify national chauvinism rather than anything else, which I think you need to be very fucking careful with. I will say it's really important. If you're interested in nationalism, read Marxism: The National Question by Stalin. Okay, you might not like Stalin, fair enough, but there's one thing that Stalin does say, and he says that the proletariat can never unite under the bourgeois national flag. Okay, we can never unite under this bourgeois nationality. So the proletariat should never unite under a bourgeois nation. For example, America, that was formed as a bourgeois nation by the bourgeoisie and for the bourgeoisie. It has never been anything else but that. So you're not going to have the proletariat, the colonized people, uniting under the flag of the oppressor. So you need to answer the national question within these conditions that is responsive to the various nations that exist within them, the oppressed nations within them. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's a much larger question. There's a lot more to talk about within that, but I would say, if you want to just say black and white, be very fucking crude about it. I would say nationalism is probably something you should steer clear of. But if you're from a colonized context, if you are subject to national oppression, then you're gonna know that there is going to be some element of nationalism within your liberation struggle, as such as in the case of Ireland, such as in the case of Palestine. And many other places as well. The Philippines as well. The communists in the Philippines will call themselves nationalists, fighting for national liberation, no doubt about it. But again, it's a left wing nationalism, and it's a lot more nuanced than the bourgeois narrow nationalism that seeks to unite people regardless of their class standing under the national banner. Not making a distinction between the proletarian nation versus the bourgeois nation. Which is a huge problem. So.
Like I just say, like, do you think that the Cherokee Nation is the same as white nationalism? Right? Like, it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
Really not.
Yeah. You can't, like, black nationalism can never be compared to white nationalism. They're diametrically opposed to each other. It's
You're literally talking about an enslaved group of people who were forced to come to the West, right? Like,
yeah. You know, actually, I just thought as you said that, I just thought of something that I thought of a pretty interesting comparison. It's when people say that black nationalism is the same as white nationalism, and there are social democrats who do say that black nationalism is the same. It's all ethno nationalism. It's all bad. It's this, it's that, it's the other. This is the same argument that chuds make against feminism. Oh, so you want like women to be the oppressors? You know, you want like this whole thing that like you're fighting for women's liberation. That means the oppression of men. It's like no. No,
yeah,
there's a reason why certain oppressed groups need a struggle to unite around to fight for liberation together, you know,
right.
and I think that follows through with the national question as well as the question of like feminism and as well as like LGBTQ plus stuff and all kinds of other forms of oppression that we see throughout society, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, like, I mean, like, that's the thing is everybody thinks everything is everything else. Nobody knows that anything is different from anything, right? So, if nationalism and leftism is ideologies, then it's all if leftism is an ideology, then nationalism is an ideology, and all of these things. But it's like, no, it's actually one of the tools that different ideologies use to do certain things in context, right? Populism in a right-wing context can be used to enforce fascism very easily. Obviously, Hitler, duh,
yeah,
right? But but it can also be used in other ways, like
yeah.
Bernie Sanders, or AOC, or any number of other revolutionary figures that were fighting for leftist causes. All of those different people can all use that sort of thing to be able to energize people, right? Populism can be used in many different ways, just like nationalism can be used in many different ways. But yeah, colloquially, when you hear the word nationalism,
Be
it
careful,
usually
yeah.
means something
Yeah.
bad. So
You gotta be careful.
yeah, be super duper careful of it. Absolutely.
Mm, mm.
Right. There's nuance in everything, right? But don't be a sucker.
Yeah, definitely. I strongly agree with that. Thank you, comrade. I appreciate that. Cool question actually here from Fletcher Richmond. Where can you see revolution happening? I want to see straight away. Revolution is gonna happen. It is happening. It's happening right now in the Philippines. It's right now. Revolution is up. Revolutionary People's War is happening right now in the Philippines. Get your eyes on there. And people, unfortunately, people don't know about this. It's happening right now. It's a
I
long,
love it.
protracted process. It's not overnight. It's not weeks. It's years. It's decades, and it's been going on for decades, and it'll take more decades, you know. But it is
Yeah.
ongoing, and it is getting stronger and stronger, and it will win. You can't defeat the people's war. And CPI Maos as well in India are doing some great work, as well as the other communist organizations in India are doing some great work. So I would say those are the two big ones for me: Philippines, India. Check them out. I think there's some really there's a lot to look forward to and be excited about there. Sorry, Aaron, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no! I was going to cut you off. So, like, yeah, I think that's the thing is that everybody always looks at the revolution as though it's some sort of thing that's happening in the future, some sort of thing that we need to achieve some sort of day, some sort like way off. And it almost feels to me like the rapture in Christianity, where like eventually everything is going to fall to pieces. And I don't think that revolution is necessarily that simplistic. I think that revolutionary groups are working towards a revolutionary goal all across the world right now, even in the West. I think that even to a small extent, what a lot of the Marxist Leninists and communists and anarchist groups have done over the course of just showing the presence within the George Floyd protests
Mm.
and the Black Lives Matter protests and establishing independent communities and that sort of thing. I think the revolutionary spirit is really starting to ignite in places where it has not been seen in a long, long time. And I think that even though a lot of people say that revolution will only come from the global south and that sort of thing, we can't. The West won't allow the global south to have a revolution. So long as there isn't a revolution done in the global north, right? So I think that all of those groups that are working in the West right now, in the West, have been doing a pretty fucking bang up job, especially considering that nobody really even thought about what the fuck communism was before 2016. And over the course of just a couple of years, like we've seen incredible strides, and you can see how much we're actually affecting the mainstream narrative when you just look at how fucking hard the mainstream is fighting back at us, right? Every single one of our channels are being throttled. Like,
Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, it's crazy. It's
right?
really crazy.
Thank you. Yeah. Second Thought, one of my, a comrade of mine, Second Thought, really, really great channel, has 1 million
That was great.
subscribers.
I saw that, by the way, your recent video. You did the, oh, what was it? The mass work? No, it was, shit, you did like, it was top five, remind me.
Yeah, mutual aid. So it had to do with mutual aid. But
Mutual
like,
aid, that's what it was.
his fucking video, like just even talking about the solutions, right? His video was fucking throttled like crazy.
Yeah.
He's had people from the Department of Homeland Security come knocking on his fucking door.
It's fucked.
Right? Like tons of stuff. YouTube even blocked one of his videos on the CIA. Made it completely inaccessible to anybody.
Yeah, there's like 3 warnings when you try to click. It's that video. He's got a video. It's like the CIA are a terrorist organization, and there's like 3 warnings like when you click on it. I've never seen that level of like you've got to sign in on the age. You've got to say like be aware you're clicking on, I don't know, some kind of inappropriate content. But there's like 3 warnings before you can actually access it. You click on the video, and then there's 3 separate screens before you can actually access the video. It's crazy. And this, as you said, this guy's got 1 million subscribers, more than 1 million subscribers. You know, literally. You know, it's mental.
Yeah, and he's hit hard all the time, right? And like, God bless his soul, he gave me a shout out.
Yeah,
and the video he gave me a shout out, and like that video is suppressed as well. Funny enough, it's very interesting. And other works that I've done in regards to just showing the footage from the march on the Capitol that the Chuds did a couple of months ago. All of that video footage has all been flagged and all been made completely inaccessible. You have to sign in and go through 100 different pages to get to it. When it comes to individuals that are enforcing the idea of infighting, right? When it's coming to people that are encouraging one another to not get together and to always see each other as bad guys, they get all the popularity in the fucking world, right? Man, they're going to get hundreds of thousands of views every single time they put out a video. But when it comes to people that are actually giving people information on how to fix things, you're never going to see any amount of people, any amount of traction on those videos, because they actively work towards defeating the organizations that we're functioning in, right? If we're telling people how to organize together, to form unions, to form fucking organizations, that sort of thing, and even form YouTube unions and fight against the power structures that we're functioning under, YouTube isn't going to look at that very happily, right? They're not going to look at that like it's a good fucking thing. They're going to fight against it. So that's why channels that are showing how to fix the problem are being suppressed so much. And when and other channels that are enforcing infighting and division are advanced in the algorithms. As far as I'm concerned,
there's something fucked going on there. Genuinely, like if you look at this video versus looking at our previous video that we did together, and just look at the numbers. This video, we're hanging out, we're vibing, we're having fun. The last video we did, even though we were hanging out having fun, the title of that video is very inflammatory. It's a bull, and we talked about this beforehand, just doing it to play it up. It was like tanky versus anarchy, some shit like that, you know, like debate to the death. We didn't actually. We thought we shared our different perspectives, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. And it was great, but like once you have that kind of title in there, I don't know, like I don't want to speculate too much on it, but definitely this kind of conflict definitely drives views, and it seems to be giving, maybe putting stuff we don't want to be in the spotlight into the spotlight a little bit too much. As you said, this kind of infighting is definitely magnified to crazy levels. We all fucking, every left-wing YouTuber hates each other, you know, now, and it's there's I don't know, it's it would be easy to get into some kind of conspiratorial thinking about that, about how this is all functioning.
It would be. Let's not delve down the conspiratorial lane.
We're not gonna, but you can understand. Like,
thing. It's just interesting that every time something that hurts the left happens to get major traction, but every time something that would help the left never does. It's just interesting how that happens. Not going to make any speculations on why.
It's screwy. It's screwy. Whether this is just the people, and whether it is just a heartless algorithm, which is just saying that people are more interested in conflicts than they are in, conciliation and vibing and having fun, or whether it's something slightly more nefarious. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But it is interesting. The second thought. I'm doing a video with second thought actually. I'm doing a video with second thought in a few weeks, so that'll be fun as well. You got Nick, I think, as well. That might be doing a video with second thoughts. I think it's
he's such a dude.
Such a
bro.
Really
awesome.
I can't believe. I think what Second Thought did is fucking amazing. Second Thought just gamed it. Second Thought was just like, man, I'm gonna get 1 million subscribers and then I'm gonna be a communist.
I
know. I'm just gonna talk about normal shit. I'm gonna talk about I'm just gonna talk about like games and shit. I'm gonna talk about like society. Well, no big deal. Now I'm gonna talk about communism. I got 1 million subscribers.
It's so fucking brilliant. I couldn't stop telling him how fucking smart this was.
It's amazing.
Because like seriously,
what
the motherfucker gets like 100,000 views per video. Could you imagine how much class consciousness could be spread by one person that has 1 million fucking subscribers, dude?
Jesus. You said the last time you came on the stream. You said that thing about like the Communist Manifesto and how few people actually read the Communist Manifesto when it first came out. Just compare that. Compare that to how many people see Second Thought's fucking videos.
Right. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, oh, sorry, I'm banging my microphone. For those of you who don't know, like I was saying before, the Communist Manifesto had an original run, I think, of like 1,000 fucking copies. It was something super small, right? And that ended up inspiring so much that an entire movement ended up starting to grow just out of the publication, not only of that, but of several different things, but of that. And now hundreds of thousands of people are hearing about things like mutual aid, like class consciousness, like how these power structures are being formed. Like, it's just unfucking believable.
Yeah.
And the reach, like, oh my God, hard just thinking about it.
It's fucking crazy. Yeah, it's mental.
It's crazy.
And also, like,
it's outrageous.
He's like a genuinely just a good lad. I was kind of thinking like, man, is he like, I don't know, like he must be more like social democratic or something. And I was kind of like, can I push it? Like the video that I'm gonna be doing with him is he's doing one. Why are so many young people turning to socialism? So like, why are so many young people becoming socialists? That's gonna be fucking cool, But my one is why communism. So specifically the C word, why communism? And I'm going to get into like historical materialism. I'm going to go all the way back to the fucking, the fucking Paris Commune, all the way up to the revolutions in the Philippines right now. Like, go like unabashedly Marxist-Leninist and Marxist-Leninist Maoist. And I was like,
yes.
Are you okay with this? Like, is this gonna fuck you up? Like, associating with this fucking tanky? And he was like, no, it's cool. Don't worry about it. No problem. We need to fucking, get people used to this terminology and engaging with the ideas and everything. I was just like, oh shit, this is
such a wonderful dude. He's such a wonderful person. I like the heart on this motherfucker is so fucking huge. Yeah. In the middle of us doing the little video that we did together, he suffered through the whole snowstorm that happened in Texas.
Oh,
right.
Shit.
And he was getting fucked up by it. Right. He had to run his dryer so he would keep his fucking pipes warm. Like this guy. Oh my God. And through it all, it didn't stop him. He's like, you know what? No, I got to talk about how we need to fix the fucking problem. And that's what I respect that guy so fucking much. It's unbelievable. Like, shout out
big shout
Second Thought.
Big shout out from our small tiny corners of YouTube. If people haven't heard of this channel with 1 million subscribers,
how that he's doing for the fucking movement is outrageous.
It's
it's
mental,
just giving a fucking microphone to a lot of these ideas that need to be talked about.
Yeah.
Right? They need to
Yeah.
be talked about so fucking badly, and we need somebody to actually like advance these ideas.
Yeah.
Right? We can't have the bullshit fucking half measure crap that we get from other channels, right? Like I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of mainstream liberal news channels, right, that give the fucking half measures all the time and don't tell people the real truth and how to solve these fucking problems. And it's nice to see that somebody actually takes the time and actually cares enough to do that. So
without watering it down.
I really appreciate it.
Without, he's
That's
like,
right.
fuck it. Anarchism, yes. Communism, yes. Maoism, yes. Like, he's literally had no problem. It was crazy. I was like, I don't know. I suppose I just kind of have this perception in my head of like, oh, well, you know, you've got like 1 million subscribers. You must be, you know, establishment-y or something like that. But I mean, I was right. And like, you watch his videos and like, he actually is talking about something like, properly. Like, I think he's someone who's very quickly radicalizing as well. You know, I think he's moving to the left very, very quickly as well, which I think is very, very interesting to see. And I asked him a little bit about his political development, and he said that he has been.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Excuse me. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's about the ideas and not the personality, and that's a big fucking deal for a YouTuber, right? Like none of us are like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I was just saying that he told me a little bit about his like political development and how he has been like moving to the left and becoming much more like a socialist and a communist as time goes on. And so I think it's really interesting to see. It's really cool. Love to see it.
Yeah, it is.
And it's
very cool.
It's great. It's an interesting counterweight because like we on one hand we have like, you know, BreadTube and stuff like that, and I think the biggest BreadTubers would be ContraPoints, Philosophy Tube, H-Bomber. Maybe
what does
Sean.
that even mean though, right? Like
sort of progressive.
I mean, I don't know what that, like I'm not sure what their political ideologies are.
You know, that's so fucking interesting. It feels to me like someone like Second Thought may have out-lefted LeftTube.
I totally agree.
He seems more radical than any of them. Like, if I'm being honest, like looking at like
what fucking point, right? Like, there's an idea there, but like when it comes to the other ones, like there's definitely ideas, but I don't think that it has a grounding. On anything, but I don't know. I don't want to make.
We're speculating, I guess. Yeah.
No, and also total respect to all of them. They fucking.
Oh, they work.
They created the groundwork for what we stand on right now. So they nothing but love to all of them.
Oh yeah, big love to them. Although I am suspicious. I think that they might be more social democratic than, you know, the far left that we might be on. You know, but that's okay as well. There's a place for that. You know.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I do think it's important that you know, people like you are getting out and actually talking about like real life organizing and actually telling people to go out and get involved with the masses and, as you say, knock on doors and talk to people and engage, do mass line work and be principled, genuine, revolutionary socialists and communists who are out there engaging with people day in day out. You know, and I would like to see more big faces, big personalities, big YouTube channels actually talking about that, actually saying, hey, join a communist party, join an organization, join a workers union, whatever it might be, you know, just actually get out and do these things, you know. And it would be amazing to see that. So let's hope.
Yes, I totally agree. And I appreciate all the things that you do as well, especially your Socialism 101 series. Not meaning to gush, but like, holy shit, you ever lay stuff out in a very easy to understand way. Thank you very much for that.
I really appreciate you saying that.
Oh yeah, no, I've been sending it to all kinds of people to try to just show them like, no, this is what this means.
Oh wow! You know, one guy said he sent it. He was showing it to his co-workers, and I was just like, "Wow, that's crazy!" Because like if you think about that, that's like having a conversation with someone like in a workplace, like organizing in a workplace, and that's crazy. Like the technology we have at our hands right now, it's just crazy. Even though we're being throttled, and even though we're being fucked by the algorithm and by YouTube, and in all kinds of ways. The people are still using this information to propagate really progressive ideas, and I think that there's a lot of potential here until we get clamped down on by the state.
Until they completely catch our grift and shut us down entirely. We have to figure out some way to we have to like get all of our stuff on other platforms. I've been trying to do that, but fucking time, man.
For like last year,
YouTube monopolizes your time, man. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I've been planning on doing that for like a year now, and it's just I keep on putting it on the long finger, putting it on the back burner, and just saying I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, for me, it's almost like, yeah, no, like actually, like learning and researching and trying to explain all of these things turned into a full-time job, and I don't have time after work to redo all of that on another platform. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah, it
So,
takes a
fuck.
long time. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get you. Oh, actually, I just want. There's been a question in the chat here that's been asked a bunch of times, and it was actually
Sure.
asked in not only a bunch of times in this conversation, but it's also been asked in other conversations, and I have been meaning to answer for probably about a month at this stage, so I'm gonna answer it now, quickly if I can. Elijah Hammond asks Paul, worker cooperatives versus small government within socialism. Which is better for abolishing the commodity form? Now, this is a tricky one. I would say that if we're talking about abolishing the commodity form and producing for use rather than producing for exchange, for profit, and so on and so forth, then I would say it's probably better to focus for that stage. I would say that the government form is better for that. The state-led form, the centralized planned form, is probably a little bit easier to do that. Mao talked a little bit about this. Mao, when he was talking about like socialist construction in China, in Mao's China post 1956, he mentioned how difficult it was to when it came to like the communes and when it came to like the cooperative sort of industries, it was much more difficult to abolish to move towards the abolition of the commodity form, even though it was like in a way it was a lot more communist in one way, it was more difficult to get to the overall communist goal in another way. And so there's kind of a difficult dialectical balance to be reached between the two. So it's not one or the other, it's both. You do both as much as you can when you have like that centralized planned government production. You within that needs to be moving closer and closer towards worker ownership of the means of production when you're in that, so it's not just like this top down thing, like the even within this public sector which becomes a communal sector later on, you're moving towards something that looks more like cooperatives, and then eventually going towards communal ownership rather than just like public ownership. So it's both. I know that's not a maybe not a satisfactory answer because you probably want one or the other, but I would say it is both, and I would say that if you're curious to learn which one's better, then you should really study the situation in China and Mao's China, because it is spoken about in quite detail. I think it's spoken about quite a bit in Mobo Gao's book, The Battle for China's Past, Mao and Cultural Revolution. So check that out, the Mobo Gao book. You can find a PDF of it online. Just if you can't find it online, just send me a little direct message, and I'll send it on to you, and you can have a little read about it there, because it is really interesting to understand how socialists construction works and the contradictions that happen within that. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Did you want to speak on that, to the question of worker cooperatives versus small government ownership? I think
Yeah.
maybe I think you're probably like a little bit less into the state ownership or small government ownership, I imagine. Um,
Oh, sure.
don't know.
Yeah. So, like, I think actually that worker cooperatives are a great idea. It's a great way to inform people on how to do democratic organization and that sort of thing. But I actually think that abolishing money is an easier task than abolishing even the state itself, though I think that we should be attacking the state absolutely and abolishing that and abolishing capitalism and that sort of thing. But abolishing money, I think, is almost like the most obvious, most easy thing to accomplish because we've pretty much done it already. Not in every place, obviously. Some places in the United States, specifically in rural places, they still use a lot of actual physical cash currency. But here in Canada and a lot of other places all over the world, we don't use physical currency at all. We all have it abstracted to this monetary value that's shown up on a screen as a bunch of numbers. And it virtually works as nothing more than a barrier to stop people that have worked but are unable to afford food or housing or whatever from being able to obtain the necessities that they need to live.
Mm.
So, as far as I'm concerned, I actually think that because we have completely abstracted money into this digital format, I think that it's one of the easiest things for us to completely abolish and completely get rid of entirely. And when we do that, things like worker cooperatives, or if you want to do maybe not I don't love the idea of a central planned system, but if you
Mm,
want to do some sort of a planned system through negotiation and agreement, then I think that that sort of thing should absolutely be accessible. And it would be even easier if we didn't have, like I said before, the stick that people are using to beat people over the head with, which I think is money, which I think is completely easy to get rid of right now. The only reason why we really need it
mm,
is to have a little bit of a little bit of information for the shopkeep to know how much more goods to be able to obtain. So if they sell a certain amount of like carrots or whatever, they know to order like 50 more carrots.
mm,
That's like the only reason why I can imagine in a society where we have an overabundance of all the fucking goods,
mm.
why we would need to keep money. So it's completely unnecessary as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In communism, just like it has to be a stateless, classless, moneyless society. No doubt about it. It's gone. It's for me. The question is, how can we get there? How do we actually get to a stage of money of being a moneyless society? And abolishing money tomorrow seems kind of like a quite a challenging thing to do. I do you have any thoughts on the labor vouchers? I know that there's like some people who kind of will talk about, Marx talked about this, like labor, like lower stage communism. There will be labor vouchers rather than standard money, just based on the old sort of idea of, rather than it being from each according to their ability to each according to their needs. Under lower stage communism or socialism, it would be from each according to their need. Excuse me, from each according to their needs
From
to each
each
according to their work. That's a to each according to their work. So you do a little bit of work and you get a little bit of stuff. So whatever you need based on the work that you do, that's what you get. And that's kind of I think that was enshrined in the Soviet Constitution, maybe 1936 Soviet Constitution. But basically, this idea of to each according to their work. And I suppose it's this kind of labor voucher idea. Now, they didn't have labor vouchers necessarily in they didn't necessarily have labor vouchers the same way we think of them in this old Marxian idea in the USSR, but you couldn't necessarily freely trade the means of production and labor power in the way that you could in other societies. It looked like money, it felt like money. It was, for all intents and purposes, it kind of was money, but it didn't function the way that money functions under capitalist society. So it's kind of a more complicated question. But there have been different societies that have tried to experiment with this in different ways based on like the work you do and giving you sort of like labor vouchers and tokens to sort of get us to a place where we can properly abolish money, like as a transitional kind of thing. And I just wondered, did you have any thoughts on that? Did you have anything? Do you think
Oh
that
yeah,
there's a place for that, or what do you think?
sure. So like personally, I hate the idea of labor vouchers.
Me too.
I
They're
think that
so fucking dumb.
yeah, I mean like
Why even
basically
bother? Fuck it.
you're taking the idea of
It's the
money and
same
you're turning
shit.
it from money to basically coupons, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the
Like
same.
it's money, but with like a bunch of restrictions on it.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a gift economy or a sharing economy, which is what anarchists really truly believe in, we want to create a system where we don't have any sort of restrictions for people to be able to get the necessities that they need for life,
Mm,
right? From each according to their ability to each according to their need. The fundamental part on that is we need to produce what we are able, and we take from the community what we need,
mm,
right? And nobody knows better what you need than you. The thing about labor vouchers is that it's like one of those things that tries to commodify or tries to rationalize the disparity between how much you work, well, not necessarily how much you work, but if you work versus if you need to obtain goods, right? And what does that say when you're unable to work, right? What does that say when you have a system where For instance, say a father or a mother needs to stay home to take care of kids, or if you're disabled in any way and you're unable to work, like, are we going to give out labor vouchers based on the number of hours that you work? Are they transferable? Are they able to be saved up? Do they have to be spent in a certain amount of time? All of these things are just a bunch of complications, a bunch of bureaucracy, a bunch of bullshit that we really don't need, when the basic essential is that work needs to be put into a community for the community to exist. And from that community, you need to take out what you need. And if we operate in that way, then we don't need to worry about labor vouchers or anything like that. It can all be done through agreement. There's no reason why we need to, like I've said before, pull out a tooth one tiny piece at a time, right? When I look at all of this as like, we have a rotten tooth, right? We shouldn't just, and people say, well, we shouldn't just rip the tooth all out all at once. That'll destabilize the entire mouth. We have to take care of the small pieces at a time. We have to pull out small pieces at a time. And then over the course of decades or months or years or whatever, we'll eventually pull out the entire tooth. No, we don't need to do that. What we need to do is we need to base society on a system where we agree with one another, the free association of free producers, right? Where we agree that we need certain things from a community and we can provide certain things to that community. It can all be done through contract. And if you do that, then there's no reason why there should be any obstruction from you being able to obtain all of the goods and services and bullshit that a community is able to produce, as long as you're able to help that community produce the things that it needs in some way, right? And there's if there's enough people, there's going to be enough jobs for everybody to basically find their place. So yeah, that's the way that I look at it. I don't think that we need to have a transitionary period with money. I think that we've already gone through the transitionary period with money. We've had physical gold, then we've transferred it to a commodity form that was based on just money or greenbacks, which isn't even money, which was kind of like a different thing entirely, which transferred into this digital form on a screen. We've already gone through the transition. We don't need it. We already can exist without it, right? So let's get away from that idea entirely. We're in the future now. Right, we don't need to think about things in the way that we did in the 1800s.
Oh man, I love this idea that like we're already living in the space age. Like we're already living, like we could be, you know, like whenever I think of like automation and like AI and all this sorts of stuff, and I just think like if that was organized communally for the public good, for the interests of everyone, holy shit, fully automated luxury case-based communism.
Barrier of money, right? You'd be able to get any good that you want all across the entire world, anytime that you want, at any amount that you want, and nothing would be stopping you. All you need to do is just log onto a computer and be able to order the fucking thing, and you got it.
Boom.
Right? How amazing would that be? The only restrictions would be if certain things weren't able to be produced because of what do you call it? Deficiencies in resources, right? Like if you don't have enough whatever gold or whatever, you can't produce certain things. But yeah, essentially that's the idea, is just giving people what they need through the easiest means possible.
It's probably just gonna be like apps in the future. You just got like a little phone app, and you're just like, shit, I need some fucking bananas, and just like boop, get a banana. They'll put that onto the order, the collective societal order, and that'll be in your local supermarket. They'll get droned in to your fucking window. You'll just be sitting here fucking droning. It'll be like Wall-E but communists.
Yeah, exactly. And then like 16 boomers will still go to the grocery store and have to pick things out like individually, but it doesn't matter because they would have already calculated that shit and had the right amount of bananas there. It's okay. We know Brenda needs to get about 5 pounds of flour every 2 or 3 months. So we'll have that stocked up. It's totally fine. She doesn't need to order it on the app.
Oh man, can you just like when you just think about like computers and algorithms and all the capabilities that exist right now, like on our phones we can send like the computational power required to send a fucking rocket into space right now we have on most fucking phones, like just the ability that we have that we have right now. I mean all this shit could just be doing algorithms.
Did, right? Yeah, exactly. Look at the work that Paul Cockshott did. What was it with the Vietnamese government or whatever?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely outstanding what we're able to do with algorithms and with technology, man. Fucking amazing.
Yep, the future looks bright. If only the fucking working class could get in control of the means of production
Right.
and do
We
it
wouldn't
for
have to be
us,
afraid. We
for the
wouldn't have to be
people.
afraid of automation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Although I do know there is just kind of like what do they call it, the Luddite trend, people who are like who fought against automation, this old kind of movement. They like fought against automation because like it would steal their jobs and stuff like that. You know, automating jobs would mean they wouldn't have a job to do. So yeah, they would just like smash up the machines in factories and shit like that in the 1800s and early 1900s.
Yeah.
I can understand it. I can
I'm
understand the
like,
workers.
yeah, why the fuck would that even be a thing? Like, why wouldn't we
You know,
embrace like machines taking our jobs? And
well,
then if we
you
still
know,
wanted to do that job, then we could. I mean, like, what the fuck would stop you?
you know
If
what
a
this
machine
reminds
could
me of.
make 60. Sorry, go ahead.
This reminds me of that argument from David Graeber, the David Graeber thing, the bullshit jobs thing. You know, it's kind of like if we were like working communally and my job got automated, then that'd be fucking great. I could chill and just do other shit that was useful for the community. You know, but under
Absolutely.
capitalism, we have to create these bullshit jobs to keep everything going. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
Have you looked into David Graeber? There actually was a question earlier on. Have you read David Graeber? It's for you, Aaron. I'm not sure if
no.
David Graeber's cool.
No,
He passed away a few years ago. Unfortunately, rest in peace. But
oh,
it's
that's too bad. I'll have to look into him for
yeah,
sure.
interesting guy. Some pretty fun analyses. Talks about communism quite explicitly, which is you know, fun and provocative and stuff. So yeah.
That's super cool. And like the thing is, right, is that like, okay, so you can get like Nike Airwalks or whatever. If we had a Nike Airwalk fucking or Nike a worker cooperative in communism that produced like these easily reproducible, mass-produced fucking shoes, right? That would be fantastic. But also having independent little shoe cobblers that make like these super nice, like whatever the fuck brogues or whatever the fuck kind of fancy fucking shoes that you want. Wouldn't it be so cool if you'd be able to go to a local guy that makes shoes and say, I want these specific shoes that are done this specific way, and I want them in this material, and then like the guy's able to produce it.
Mm.
Like that's so much more favorable as far as I'm concerned than like just going and buying like whatever cheapest fucking pair of shoes that I can afford at Walmart is.
Mm.
Like that kind of thing sounds so much more interesting. And
Better
why
deal
couldn't we do that?
for all of us. Yeah.
We literally have a reserve army of labor, a bunch of fucking people without a job that they refuse to give a fucking job to that can replace us at any time if we don't perform as well as other people do, right? Like, why the fuck do we have that? If we give all of these people the ability to actually create the things that they love and put all of their like love and soul and body into a thing that they want to create, want to have like a dope ass pair of shoes that are made by an artist that loves making shoes, that'd be sick as hell. Like, why the fuck don't we want the best out of our lives? Why do we want 500 fucking toothpastes that are all called Crest that have like different tiny fucking properties that no, fuck that. Give me the best goddamn toothpaste you can fucking make. Give me the best shoes that you can make that are made to my standards. Give me the fucking shit that I want. We can fucking do it. We can. If we work together, system where we actually get the things that we want and we don't have to deal with this bullshit anymore.
Aaron, I fucking love you. You're a legend.
I love you too, man.
Come here, me. We're coming up to fucking 3 hours. Jesus fuck. Where'd the time go?
Oh, fuck.
What the fuck?
Ah, shit. That's too bad, man.
I need to. I'm gonna need to wrap it up pretty soon. My wife's gonna work in the morning. I gotta sleep. She's gonna be, you know, she's gonna be mad at me. I don't want to be doing this. I've kept her up a few times doing like fucking 6 hour streams, and she's like, Paul, I didn't sleep until 3 a.m. You're sleeping in the doghouse tonight, as they say. But yeah. So we'll have to wind things down pretty soon.
That's totally fine.
Unfortunately, it's been a ton of fun. But I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll do like a wrap up. We'll do like a full proper like we'll do shout outs, and we'll do like if you wanna plug anything or whatever, we'll do it afterwards. But last question, big one. D Toadsrune. I don't know. Die Toadsrune. I don't know. Maybe it's like the German D, like the. I just keep remembering that thing like in The Simpsons. You know, like Sideshow Bob pulls up. He pulls up the T-shirt and it's like "Die Bart Die," and then it's like, and then like the judge is just he shows it to the court and he's like, "No, this is the Bart. The it's simply German." And then the people are like, "Oh, okay. Well, someone who speaks German couldn't be a bad guy." I always think of that whenever I see this comrade in the chat's name, D Toadsrune or the Toadsrune. Sorry for my fucking boomer Simpsons jokes here. Jesus fuck, Gen Zers don't even watch the Simpsons. They don't know what we're talking about.
It's okay. I'm laughing. Yeah, it's fine. I get the joke.
You can. Millennial Squad.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one. And I don't know anything about this, so I'm gonna need you to jump in. What are Aaron's opinions on Max Stirner and egoism? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to read. I can't remember what the major book is that Max Stirner wrote, but I tried to read it, and I thought it was a super difficult read. I remember that. It's about 2 or 3 years since I actually read it, and I think that from what I remember, a lot of the stuff that he was saying was kind of like half tongue-in-cheek but half honest at the same time. So from what I remember, he believed very much in individualist anarchism. And I'm not a super big fan of the idea of individualist anarchism. I kind of fall into the camp that if you want to have full individualism, if you want to have full individual freedom as an anarchist, you can't do that without having the collective helping you out. There's no point in having the freedom to do something if you don't have the means to be able to accomplish that. And the only way that you can have the means to accomplish a thing is if you work in a society that allows you to have those means, right? You can have the freedom to own any pair of shoes or eat any hamburger that you want, but unless there's somebody there that can make the hamburger or make those shoes that you want, you don't really have the freedom to obtain those things, do you? As far as Max Stirner is concerned, I don't really know enough about his ideology to give a basic understanding of that. But that's kind of my take on individualist anarchism. I think that to fully embrace the individual, you need to embrace the collective.
Extremely based. And I totally agree. Absolutely, the individual will benefit to incredible levels once we have a collectivist system. Because I mean, Jesus Christ, by fucking definition, the collective includes the individual. What the fuck?
Exactly, and that's the thing too, right? Is that like all of these men with big ideas who've written thick volumes of books all envision this idea of the collective as well, when they completely forget the individual, right? So the reverse is true as well. We have to pay attention to what the individual needs and what the individual wants, because with that, we're able to empower everybody in a society and create a society of people who benefit in all ways from the freedom and from the liberty and so forth that they are able to obtain through collectivism. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much. I need to read Stirner. Some people say there's this thing like this, it's like a meme that he like didn't actually exist, like he was just like a straw man that was created or something like that. I don't know how true that is, but some people said that, and yeah. Anyway, apparently there's not very much proof that he actually existed, but yeah, I don't know if that's true or that's just like a meme that people say online. But anyway, because I think there's no like photo. I don't think there's any like photographs of him or something like that. I think there's just like one picture or something like that that's drawn of him. That old picture that people have, you know, like the guy with the glasses, like looking to the sides. But yeah.
Really?
Well, I don't know. This is just shit that I heard online. I could be talking complete bollocks here, so don't take anything I say.
The socialism like iceberg, where it's like way down at the bottom of the iceberg, like the weird shit. Somebody needs to make a socialism iceberg, by the way, because like there are too many of those in gaming culture that we need to have one of those for socialism, because that would be down at the btom. Like, does Stirner exist? Is he just a ghost? Is he a spook?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Actually, Howdy Friends in the chat there says the theory is that he was Engel's alternate ego. It's alter ego.
Yeah, that's interesting shit. That's
funny.
like it is El Real in like Mario 64 shit. Like, is this a real thing? Who knows? Is Luigi really a playable character in Mario 64?
There was a version, the Nintendo DS version. You could play Luigi and Mario and stuff, but I don't know the original Mario 64. I don't know. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll do a little shout out to the comrades in the chat. If you want to shout out in the chat, just put a little 07 and I'll shout you out after this. But comrade, would you like to plug anything just before we finish off? And I will say, by the way, please, if people who are watching this have not subscribed to Aaron's channel, please do. It's a great channel. It's really interesting. I watch it all the time. I don't get notifications from YouTube. YouTube does not notify me of his videos, so I have to check in a couple times a week and see his shit, and I do, and it's good and it's cool. You did a good video on I think your most recent one was actually on electoralism, and you were saying like how much you fucking hate talking about electoralism in the US.
It's terrible.
I totally fucking agree.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I make. I try to make videos every Monday and Friday, so tune in on Mondays and Fridays. Hopefully, I put out a video on those days. And yeah, YouTube will not tell you about my channel. Shout out to Young Simba and Deadman. They were brought up earlier in the chat, and they are awesome fucking channels. They need to be shouted out, and they need to have more subscribers because they're super good.
Yep.
I hope they put out more content soon. Yeah, you can check out my channel at youtube.com/deadheadanimation, which is funny because Deadman Animation, like,
so close.
You have the same fucking name. God damn, weird. Okay, anyway, it was like a weird name that my like old roommate made up. So like anyway, youtube.com/deadheadanimation. Yeah, like I really appreciate you letting me shout out my channel here. We try to do on the ground activism as much as we can, and we try to take the ideas that y'all come up with and that I've come up with as well, and we try to implement them in real life. So yeah, if you want to come down and hang out with us and help along with the journey, that would be super duper helpful.
Absolutely. Please do subscribe. It's a lot of really good stuff there, and also encouragement and advice for real life organizing and real life activism, which is what this is all about. It's not just about some bullshit. It's not just about doing fucking debates with random people on YouTube. It's not just about fucking clout. This is about actually enacting real meaningful social change. Even though we are hanging out and having fun and maybe getting a little bit intoxicated, having fun, but there is a larger political goal here, and transformation and overthrow of capitalism are essential to that. So guys, please do support comrades who are actually working towards that goal, and Aaron is definitely a comrade who is doing that. Go ahead, subscribe. Twitter as well. Twitter is in the link below. Patreon, if you have a euro or $1 or $2 per month that you can spare it for Aaron, you'll find a link to that in the description box below. Go ahead and support a good comrade. I'll do a quick shout out to the comrades in the chat here. I see 07s from Howdy Friends. I see an 07 from Zevin I see an 07 from, who else do I see? Donald Quistelva, Wigged Rope, Zanzi. Good to see you, Zan. How are you getting on? I'm sorry.
Hey!
Zan is amazing.
Zanzi?
I love Zanzi so much. I think
so smart.
very, very, very intelligent fella, and a lot of respect and love. I love for him. He's great guy. I think there was a question earlier on which I missed by Zan, by the way, so I apologize for not getting to that, but next time we'll definitely get to it. Cheers.
Definitely, yeah.
Comrades, thank you very much. Lots of love. Have a great weekend. Aaron, again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a ton of fun. I really enjoyed this. We'll have to do it again soon. It's just been absolutely great. It's so fun to see us both converging on Maoism at the moment. It may be fucking up our organizing in real life. But it's certainly a really cool point of intersection that we're both engaging with right now. So yeah, I hope you enjoy continuing to read Mao. I know I certainly will, and we'll definitely have to do something like this again soon.
Brad, I love it, man. Anytime you want me on, I do nothing. So I'm just sitting here waiting for you to call me.
Me too, man. I'm just waiting by the phone, just like hoping any day. Like, is Aaron gonna call me? Am I gonna come on his channel? Is he gonna start streaming?
We just need to text each other more often. That's all. That's what we need. Future social.
We got a flourishing bromance happening right at the moment.
Yeah. only if you Gopnik and Zanzi are there too. Like, we got to make it a full foursome. We've got to get them all in there.
Why stop before? Fuck it. Where's Hakeem?
There's so many more. We need to have a good big
Second
group
thought.
chat.
Jesus fuck.
Just jump in the pile, get in the orgy.
Oh shit! We should have ended the stream a minute or two ago.
We have to end this stream now, or else this is gonna get really weird.
It's gonna get weird for the people in chat. In the chat. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great weekend. I don't know if I'm gonna have a video out. I don't know if I'm gonna have a video out, a Socialism 101 video out this week. I've been working on a couple of videos at the same time, which is making it take a little bit longer. It might be next week. I might end up releasing like 2 videos at once because I'm doing the video for Second Thought, and I'm not sure at what point this month I'll be releasing that, but it is coming soon. Next week, Politstrom. No, is it Politstrom? No, Pro Cult is coming on next week, so we're gonna be talking about the communist mode of production. It's gonna be an interesting conversation. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Let's look forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a great weekend, comrades. Love and solidarity. Have a great one. Cheers, everybody. August Slán go fóill.